look, it's been, of course, fun to talk about, behind the scenes, and you kind of explain me where you, again, the main job and what you do, and you kind of, you've been a little bit shocked, like we've been talking for 20 minutes and this guy is not recording the show yet. Look, but
Yeah, what the hell?
yeah, but it's awesome. Look, I mean, I love the enthusiasm, the passion, again, for what you do, and I love the fact that I think what you do is you kind of described you're an expert in a very kind of small, tiny field, but you're very like in depth when it comes to the knowledge. And I think this is
Right.
the ultimate mastery, because there's a lot of people who are skilled in many different things, but they know a few percent there, a few percent there, and they have a lot of kind of small skills, but they're not masters in anything. So this is really cool of what you do. But for you guys, you're going to see in a few seconds Alan Mitchell. So again, you're going to find a bunch of links in the show notes. Again, YouTube channel, it's great. Make sure to go and give him a subscribe. And again, you're going to find a lot of valuable content there as well. As he says himself, his YouTube channel teaches beginners the ropes. And we're talking about astrophotography today. So Alan, maybe you can give a little bit more background about how did you get started, besides the programming, everything that you're working on now, besides the job and everything else that you do. How did you came about with the astrophotography? Where did it came from?
So the astrophotography started back in 2010. I'm trying to remember. It was in August 2010. I know this because I just actually had to answer this question for somebody when they asked how I got started. It's like a week or so ago. I had to look up my very first astrophoto I ever took. So I bought an 8-inch Orion Dobsonian telescope, and it was, those are just mainly for visual because you have to push them, so you can't really do astrophotography with them. And I was looking at the moon in the daytime because it was up, and I was like, why not? And the air that day, hot, humid, muggy Texas afternoon heat, the air was still, it was too heavy for turbulence. And so I was looking at some craters like Copernicus and Theophilus and I think even Tycho, and they were just so vividly still and clear. And I was like, my brother, who's not really into space like I am, but likes it enough, like he'll look at the moon and he'll ask me a ton of questions. I was like, he needs to see a photo of this. So I went and I grabbed my little tiny Olympus point and shoot. I think I paid like $150 for it on Craigslist. And I'm sitting there and I'm trying to hold it up to this eyepiece on this Orion Dobsonian as the moon is moving through the frame. And I'm just waiting for this crater to get right in the middle of it. And I, taking pictures of it, holding it, there's a bunch of camera shakes. So I probably had to take like 100 photos to get one that was still and crisp and didn't have all the camera shake. And so I told my wife, my wife now, she was my fiance at the time. It's like, I need to get something to hold the camera still because I can't do this. And she goes, what are you talking about? And so I showed her the pictures I took. And she's like, you were out there taking pictures? I thought you were just looking at the moon. I was like, no, I was trying to take pictures because I'm going to put them on Facebook and show my brother. And so she's like, okay. So I bought a camera mount and used that 2 or 3 different times. And I was like, no, I need something different. And so I kind of stopped doing astrophotography for a while because I realized what I have. The Dobsonian, the point and shoot, and the little camera holder that, it's such a pain in the butt to get all lined up and get it just right. And then it always wants to continuously autofocus. And so it's always focus hunting. And it would be, I think they call it breathing, where it's like going in and out, in and out. It was just a pain. So I was like, I'm going to start saving money and I'm going to buy a platform that makes astrophotography easier. And at the time we had a telescope store here in Dallas called the Observatory. If you've got any Dallas viewers and they've been around the Metroplex for at least 8 years, they know of it. It closed a couple of years back. Amazon killed it. I think I got a dog in here somewhere. Anyway, you might see a dog pop up here in the middle of the interview at some point. That's just my dog hopping in my lap. Anyway, the Observatory went out of business, but before they did, I went down there and I started like window shopping and looking at stuff, and finally got sold on getting a Celestron Edge HD 1100, so a big 11-inch Schmidt Cassegrain on a CGEM telescope mount. And I bought all the accessories for a DSLR camera to connect to the back. My wife had a Nikon DSLR, so I bought all the stuff to hook up a Nikon. And the very first couple of times I took it out, I got it polar aligned, and I pointed it at like Jupiter, I think, was up at that time of year. And so my second foray into astrophotography was planetary astrophotography using a Nikon DSLR on Jupiter. And then I switched to Canon because Backyard EOS had recently come out with like version 2, and a lot of people were saying that it was such a great upgrade. So I bought it and got a Canon camera to go with it, and really started going hard and heavy into planetary. So then I did like Saturn, I tried to do Mars, and I did planetary for a couple of years. Then I wanted to do deep sky, which is really hard to do with a DSLR and a really big Schmidt Cassegrain on a CGEM. So I started saving up money again. So, here I am. I've been doing astrophotography at this point for 5 years, and I finally get my my Paramount MyT, but it won't hold my 1100 without spending like $400 on an extra counterweight. And I didn't want to spend an extra $400 just to use my telescope. So I sold the 1100 and I bought my Stellarvue. And then I didn't need the CGEM anymore. So I sold the CGEM. And so I just used a 4-inch Stellarvue refractor to do deep sky astrophotography for a number of years. And I think it's been about a year now, I got a Ritchie Crichton, carbon fiber Ritchie Crichton. So that was my third telescope that I got. Well, third astrophotography telescope, fourth actual telescope that I've been able to use. I purchased several Schmidt Cassegrains that are broke and don't work, and I've never been able to fix them. But yeah, that's how I got started. So it's been a long 10-year journey, but that was my start.
Exactly. So the journey is keep going now, and I see the recent photos that you have on your Instagram. By the way, guys and girls, you're gonna find that link in the bio, is of course in the show notes. Some images of the moon. I see the recent images as far as 3 weeks ago. So you're still after the moon, after even these days. Again, we probably can talk about astrophotography a lot, but again, as I told you prior to the interview, I would like to kind of go maybe a little bit wider, because again, space industry is quite wide, so we can talk about different things. But when it comes to, again, you having this YouTube channel and now teaching the ropes of, how to get started in astrophotography, when it comes now to the equipment, and again, through all this like 10 years experience, like, what do you recommend for the beginners? Like, I asked a bunch of different astrophotographers, everybody recommends a different thing. So I would love to get your personal take, like when it comes to equipment, what do you recommend?
I have an insanely unpopular opinion amongst the previous generation. So I'm Gen X, so this would be like the baby boomer generation and older, and even of my other Gen X compatriots. A few of us have similar thoughts, but me and those few others are the outlier. Just jump in, figure out exactly what it is you want to do. Don't go cheap, because nothing cheap is good and nothing good is cheap, right? This is an expensive hobby. No matter what you do, there's no way to do astrophotography without investing a few $100s. I mean, yes, there are people out there who can do wide field like Milky Way shots on a tripod and a DSLR with one of these 50 millimeter lenses, right? This is a $300 lens. This right here, just this piece, forget the camera, just this is $300. That's your minimum investment to do a Milky Way shot, something like this. So there's no way to do this without spending a few $100s. Get into the mentality of it's going to be a bit of sticker shock until you kind of get used to the landscape and you understand why it's expensive for equipment that's going to perform the way you want it to perform. And plan. Don't just buy something because you saw someone else make a nice photo with it. Plan. Make sure that that's the type of photography you want to do. Like if you saw my moon photos and you thought those are really, really good, don't buy my 8-inch Ritchie Crichton telescope because you liked my moon photo, because that's a $1,600, not easy to use telescope that requires a bunch of other accessories like laser collimators and stuff like that just to get working. And then, you upgrade the focuser and you put a motorized focuser on it. Now your $1,600 telescope is, $2,300, $2,500 investment just because you like my moon photo, when there's 10 other telescopes out there that can produce as good or better photos that won't take such an investment to do. That Ritchie Crichton is also really good at galaxies. And if you have no interest in doing galaxies because they take so long to get the photos and you'd rather just do quick shots of the moon or quick shots of the planets, get a Schmidt-Cassegrain, get a Maksutov Cassegrain telescope, something that's got, f10 to f15 focal ratio. But understand why you're buying a telescope when you jump into this hobby. Don't get a Dobsonian because 10 old guys told you, get a Dobsonian and learn the night sky. Screw that. You're going to waste too much of your time, learning the night sky. And then your Dobsonian isn't going to do the astrophotography anyway. So why are you spending the $400 today to learn the night sky when 6 months from now, you're going to be spending another $1,500 on a tracking mount that has a hand controller that'll find things for you? It's when people say learn the night sky with a star chart, like Left Turn at Orion, which is a good book, and I'm not trying to slam it, but people who recommend that you start at Left Turn for Orion or with a star chart and a Dobsonian, those are the same people who, when you have a question, they're telling you that you need to go to the library and you need to learn the Dewey Decimal System and have to learn how to do a catalog lookup in the old index card system to find the encyclopedia that has the paragraph that you want. I'm the guy that's telling you, go to Google, phrase your question this way, and you'll get 100 articles in a second that'll tell you what you need to know. That's the difference between a Dobsonian with a star chart and a go-to equatorial mount. The library is the old way to do it. It's a lot of work. It's really hard. And there's very little convenience with that. The go-to mounts, they're computer controlled. They're way more accurate than you'll be if you get them set up properly. And there's a convenience tax to pay for that. And that's the price difference between a $1,500 CGEM, and that's just the mount. That's not even a telescope on it. That's just the tracker. And a Dobsonian that costs $350. That's what you're paying for, is the ability for it to follow the object so you don't have to, for its ability to find the faint thing that you can't see until you learn how to train your eyes to look through an eyepiece. It's the ability to integrate software to do the plate solving to make sure you are always on target every single time you go to some thing in the sky that you can't find on your own. Like, there's some nebulas that are invisible to the human eye inside of a city. You have to go way outside of town to find them. So you'd never stand a chance finding it with a Dobsonian. But that CGEM will find it for you, or the Celestron AVX, or if you get, maybe you spend a little bit more money and get a Gemini 2 tracker for a Losmandy mount. That's why you spend the money up front, you pay that convenience tax, but you get something that will do what you want the first time. You don't waste your time and you don't waste your money. It's already expensive. Don't buy it twice. Just pay once. Make sure it will do what you want it to do. Ask a ton of questions online. You can ask me through Facebook. I'm in a couple of different groups, but don't just seek out my opinion on Facebook. We all know there are thousands of us out there who have been doing this long enough to know all the mistakes you're about to make. And when we tell you don't do this because you're going to spend more money tomorrow or next month, we know what we're talking about, because I have a $6,000 mount in my observatory in my backyard that cost me almost $10,000 to buy, because there were $4,000 of other purchases that I made along the way that didn't work. So if I had just did what I'm advocating now, I could have just saved myself $4,000, which would have gone to car payment, mortgage payment, if I had kids, a vacation, or more telescope stuff. So it's expensive. We get that. But eagerness to jump right in and buy all the wrong stuff is going to cost you double or more in the long term. People who are telling you, oh, you need to get a Dobsonian telescope and these books and a star chart, they're going to cost you more money in the long run, especially if that's not what you want to do. If you don't want to look with your own eyes, if you don't want to own a single eyepiece, you just want cameras and telescopes, the people who tell you to buy a Dobsonian are the wrong people to listen to. But if you do, want to also look through an eyepiece and you really don't care about the photography stuff right now, like you know you're going to be doing it later, but you really want to just see it with your own eyes, then yeah, you can listen to those people. But I'm not saying totally discount the people that say buy a Dobsonian in these books. If you actually have an interest to do what they're telling you to do, follow that advice. But if you just see pictures and you want to make pictures and you don't care about eyepieces, don't buy a Dobsonian. Don't buy the books. Just jump right in, get the computerized equipment, ask a ton of questions before you make a purchase so you don't spend 2 or 3 times the money in the long run like I did, or everybody else for that matter. Be the person who did it right the first time and saved thousands. You'd be a hero if you did it right the first time and you didn't spend double or triple, because I don't think anybody's been able to do that yet.
Yeah. Look, because now, Alan, you just see me here sitting and smiling because, look, I do agree with you a lot on this because, look, again, I do agree with you 120%, 1,000% that not having a plan, which a lot of people go into this astrophotography, they think, okay, I want to do something like just, they start buying equipment without asking people any question. And then you see this equipment is being, for sale, especially during these tough times, which again is a shame. But as you talked about, again, it depends on what you want to do. Again, if it's just astronomy or, astrophotography. So we have to, first of all, decide if you want to just look through the scope and see the moon live. You want to see everything live. You want to look at the galaxies. That's a different thing. If you want to do astrophotography, it's a completely different thing. And again, thank God for your channel. As I said, so you can tell people exactly what to do, what not to do, what to buy, what not to buy. Giving people guidance, I mean, it's super important because this is a quiet learning steep, like in the astrophotography game, and you can get lost very easy and you can get discouraged very easy, and that's where people quit a lot too. And again, you mentioned a lot of great people before we start recording. So again, being part of the network, and again, I know that you have, let me pull this up, 23,000 members on a Facebook group. So can you tell, like, and of course I'm going to link that in the show notes too. So can you tell, like, what people ask you the most, when it comes to astrophotography these days? Is it still the equipment, post processing? Yeah. Like, what's the main thing that people ask these days?
So people ask, like, come to me in direct messages or stuff like that, specifically for like solving a specific problem, and everybody has their own specific problem that they need, that they reach out to me for help with, right? But in terms of what's the most common question that I've seen in all the groups that I'm a member of, like the Backyard Astronomy Club, the group that I help admin is the Telescope and was it Amateur Astronomy and Telescope Imaging and Binocular Forum. It's a mouthful to say. We call it the main group amongst us friends because we're all admins in there. But yeah, we got 23,000 members, and I would say 5 or 6 times a day, somebody comes in and says, I've got $400. I want to buy a telescope for myself, my husband, my wife, my kid. They want to buy a telescope, but they don't want to spend a lot of money. And so secretly, before I actually reply, I'm asking myself, why do you want this telescope? I mean, do you have an interest in astronomy in general? Maybe you should get binoculars instead. Do you have an interest in the moon, and that's why you want a telescope? Do you have an interest in planets? Do you want to see galaxies? Because you're going to be disappointed if you buy the wrong telescope for the wrong target. If you buy binoculars and you want to see galaxies, disappointment, because there's only like the Andromeda and maybe the Pinwheel that I think actually show up okay. M51 might show up okay in binoculars too. I've never tried it. And then M33, the Triangulum Galaxy. That's it. Any other galaxies, you're going to be sorely disappointed. Even with my 8-inch Dobsonian, the Andromeda Galaxy was kind of impressive. But, when I went to go try to find M51, M101, M33, I couldn't find them. Like, I tried. I did the whole star hopping, star chart that I printed off, spiral bound, and it's just, it's got everything in it. I've done the whole star chart thing. So, if I'm telling you don't buy a star chart, I haven't opened, this is the first time I've actually picked this thing up since I set it down 7 years ago when I moved into my office. So, I've done the whole star hopping thing with the Dobsonian because I wanted to see them. That was my interest at the time. But it quickly shifted to photography, and I've never used that again. because I couldn't find anything with it. It's so hard to do in the city. So that's the thing, is you got to understand these telescopes are a tool. They only do one thing, and they do one thing very, very well, and they do everything else kind of okay. If you want to see wide field stuff like nebula or open clusters, globular clusters, galaxies, the nearby galaxies, your M31 and your M51, or not M51, 33. Get a short focal length, like 80 millimeter f5 telescope that has decent optics, and you'll be okay with that. But if you want to look at planets, that same telescope is going to be a huge disappointment because you need a ton of magnification. But magnification only enlarges what the optics are capable of receiving. So you also need wide optics to get the detail. There's no point in throwing 600 power at a planet if you can't resolve an arc second's worth of detail. It's just going to be blurry, a big blurry thing. You want that sharp, and that sharpness comes with how wide the opening of that telescope is. And people don't teach this in the groups very often. They tell you, oh, you want this telescope. They don't tell you why. But you don't understand why you're buying, which kind of goes back to one of the points I made before. If you're going to buy something, you need to understand why you're buying it. Why are you picking a Schmidt-Cassegrain at f10 over a f7 refractor? If you don't know what those terms mean, you're not ready to buy a telescope. If you don't know why a 4-inch refractor is different than a 4-inch Schmidt-Cassegrain or a 4-inch Dobsonian telescope, you're not ready to buy the telescope, because those things do different things and they are purpose built for different applications. And one will blow your mind and the other will disappoint you depending on what you're trying to do. So yeah, make sure you know why you're spending your money, because once you spend it, it's gone. And if you made the wrong choice, you gotta sell, and people haggle.
Or you keep it and you buy a next one, and that's how you ended up with 4 different telescopes.
Okay, but you save twice as long now, because the next thing that you buy is going to cost twice as much. Yeah. So if it took you 6 months to buy the telescope you don't like, it'll take you a year to buy the telescope you do like.
Yeah, yeah. Exactly.
Or you could sell the one you don't like, and 6 months later you could save. I mean, it's I've sold stuff. I still have that one back there. That's broke. It don't work. I mean, it can work. It just doesn't work for me. I've got a dead 10-inch Meade Schmidt-Cassegrain. I destroyed it. I shattered the primary mirror. Yeah, screwing a bolt in to put the dovetail back on, and I used the wrong size bolt, and it went through the telescope side, hit the side of the primary mirror, and blew a huge chunk of glass out of the side of it. So that was like an $800 oops. I bought it used. Used is a great way to save money, but you run the risk of, like this one back here, the person sold it on bad faith, and it's not what I bought. I mean, I decided to pick it up because it was $70, thinking I could do something with it, but I can't. So I just keep it around. Somebody might want to have it. One of my friends is like, I'm thinking about getting something. Like, I got it for you. Just take it off my hands. But
got it.
Nobody's asked me for it.
So can you explain because again, you got bit by the bug, because you said, how many telescopes different do you have? You have 4 different telescopes, right? Well,
so
the ones that are still working.
Oh, so I've got 2 working telescopes, but I have 4 total. 2 Schmidts that are dead, or well, one that functions, but it does not do anything that I want it to do. And then the one that I broke the primary mirror on. So those are the 2, unusable Schmidt-Cassegrains for me. But then I've got a 4-inch f7 Stellar View refractor. It's a triplet, and that I used that for 5 or so years. That was the only telescope I used. And then I just recently got an 8-inch carbon fiber Ritchie-Crichton. So that's the one that I've been using for almost consistently for the last year. I switch back and forth, but very rarely.
Gotcha.
So
And you, on top of that, you have home observatory too. So, which of course I
yeah,
want to
I've got
talk
a
about. Yeah, I want to talk about a little bit about that as well. But besides like the telescope, again, you give us some really good insights. And again, I'm going to mention that probably 20 more times that Alan has a YouTube channel where he goes into detail. We're talking about, 20, probably 30 and more, long videos, minute videos that you can go and watch and learn what he's talking about in detail. So I can't recommend enough for you guys to go and do that. But on top of the telescope, like what will be the additional pieces? People talk mount is the main piece. You need to kind of, you're going to build your equipment based on that. So any particular brands or, what do you think about the mount and any other, pieces that would be kind of crucial for getting started in astrophotography?
So yeah, you nailed it with the mount being the most important thing. I don't want to shit talk any particular brand because brands have winning products and they've also got losing products, right? So Meade makes some really good optics,
Mm-hmm.
and their fork mounts aren't bad, but about half the people I know that own fork mounts for Meade don't like them for one reason or another. Everybody has their own little quirk, their own little thing that they just don't like about them, right? Meade only makes one gem mount that I'm aware of, and it's super expensive. And as far as I know, it's kind of like the Mercedes Benz of gems. Like it's expensive, it works well, it's nice, it's great. But there's also Celestron, who makes the AVX, which is a great entry level mount if you want to do wide field stuff. If you want to do super long exposure, deep sky astrophotography, you can do it, but you need more than just the mount. You need like guiding equipment. And that's a whole other can of worms that we might be able to get to later in the show. But then you have the C-Gem, which is the upgrade to the AVX. I think they're up to like the C-Gem version 2, or maybe they're up to a version 3 now. I haven't really kept up with it. And that does a lot better. That's what I had. That was my first tracking mount. It was great. It worked good for me for about 4 years. And then I outgrew its capabilities because I wanted to go, high magnification for long periods of time. And so I needed better tracking than a C-Gem could provide. And so I saved up and I got the Paramount MyT. And I was going to get an astrophysics mount. I was on the wait list for several years and I just got impatient. Like I had the money to buy the mount, but astrophysics, as soon as they show up used on the used market, they sell real fast. Like it's hard. You got to be like constantly watching for an astrophysics mount. Yeah. And yeah, you got to be real lucky. So I was starting to get impatient because I had half the money. I was going to put a deposit down, and I wound up going with Software Bisque and getting a Paramount MyT. And I do not regret that decision at all. And I've had that mount 5 or 6 years now, and it has never ever let me down for any reason whatsoever. Like it just works. And that's what you get when you spend money and you go into the premium tiers is they just work. And I've had it 6 years. It's never broke down. I've tore it apart 3 times to add new grease to the gears. I do that like every 2 years. Probably should do it more often than that, but yeah, I mean, they're low maintenance and they just work.
So the one that you talked about, the Meade, the Meade mount versus let's say the Celestron, there's a lot of people who come to the show, they're talking about EQ6 Pro or something like that. So how price wise, how is that different versus like, let's say the Meade, the top one, kind of Mercedes Benz, the one that you're talking about? How much more is that expensive versus EQ6 or something like that?
Oh, I haven't price checked it in a while, but I want to say it's kind of in the same realm as like a Losmandy G11. It's in your $2,500 to $4,500 price range, right? And there's a bunch of mounts that you can get that fit somewhere between C-Gem and the Paramount. That's a huge jump. There's you've got Avalons. Those are Italian made, I believe. You got the M Unos. Which are a little bit less, they're like $3,000. You got Losmandy, which makes a whole bunch of mounts that are in the $2,000 to $5,000 range. And they're all very, very capable mounts, every one of those. I just went, because I knew this was going to be the last mount that the wife would let me buy. So I had to go all in with it, right? There was no, I'm going to buy a G11 and then maybe I'll upgrade 3 years from now to the Paramount. No, I knew
it's a one shot. I have to go for it.
Yeah. go for the moon. So, I skipped the Mercedes Benz and I went for the Porsche. And so, that's what that's what I have. And, I don't regret it. I mean, it was a bit of a gut punch because right after I bought the Mount, I got laid off from a job. So it's like I have this $6,000 credit card bill coming due and no job. But like we were talking about, before you started recording, the market pre-COVID or pre-pandemic was, for me, I was very lucky that, I could get a job in my field within a week or two. And I think I started 3 weeks after I got laid off at another company, and I worked there for like 3 years. So got a pay raise out of it too.
Yeah.
I didn't think the other company was underpaying me, but this other company that brought me on, they definitely wanted to pay me more. So I wasn't going to say no. And, worked there for 3 years. And then I took some time off and I did contract work for 2 years and just bouncing around to different companies, solving different problems in IT and learning a whole bunch of new skills. And now I've landed at a place that's got me on long-term contract. Been there for about a year and a half. And, again, they're paying me well enough that I could support myself and my wife throughout the pandemic, when she lost her job. And, but that's where the money that, it comes from. But at the same time, just because I have the money today, we've learned, doesn't mean I'm going to have it tomorrow, because this IT market is so volatile. Whenever the market gets shaky, IT is usually the first one that gets cut.
We remember the 2000s.
Yeah. It's a cost center. IT doesn't really generate any revenue for a company. It's where you spend your money. If you've got the money to spend as a company, you spend it in IT. And when that money dries up, IT has to go. So, sorry, my allergies are killing me lately.
Yeah.
But
look, that's another thing. I think you brought up a really great thing. And again, I'm not a financial advisor, and it's up to you to completely, guys and girls, to make that type of decision. The one that you've been talking about before, making a plan. So I think financials and understanding where you are, again, budgeting, or the way, whatever you want to call it, but you need to understand the way you are, maybe financially, everything seems great. Like prior to pandemic, I see in the companies, and the one that you're talking about, 1920, established 1920, fancy name, like it's gone overnight, like almost overnight in a week.
Right.
So you need to understand maybe where you are right now financially. So maybe making those kind of calculations, maybe feel like, okay, I can buy $6,000, can pay that for a mount, 10 grand for a scope. Like you can go as crazy because you're financially stable. Still, you need to make probably calculated decisions, because again, where we are in the market cycle, you just don't know.
Yeah. And this is not my advice. I mean, I'm going to put it out there, but when I say it, I'm not the one who coined it, but don't spend money you weren't already willing to lose. It's the, don't invest the money that you weren't already willing to lose, and if you're in a position where you can't lose any money, like if you were to have lost $20, you open up your wallet or your purse and the wind takes it away and you lost a $20 bill. If you're in that situation where that missing $20 is going to be a bad week for you, don't buy a telescope.
Yep.
Even if you can get it on Facebook Marketplace or Craigslist for, $100 and you think you can stretch that, don't do it. If you can't lose $20 or $100, just, if you can't give a homeless person on the street $100 so they could get a hotel and a hot shower and a good meal for a night, and just, if you can't give somebody that $100 as an act of kindness, you're not ready to buy a telescope.
Yep.
Because like we were saying earlier, there's a lot of really good advice that won't apply to your situation on what telescope to buy. And so when you buy the wrong one, you've wasted your money and you got to do it all over again. So you can either sell what you have at a loss and save up again, or you could just save a little longer and turn that $100 into $200 or $500 or whatever it takes to buy the equipment that you've researched to solve whatever needs you have. And that's the plan. And that's, making sure that you have the money set aside that you don't ever need to touch. Dave Ramsey, I think, talks about or teaches putting money in envelopes and only using it for that purpose, right? So if you've got something like that you're following, keep it under your mattress and you only and nothing else. You've already got your other emergency fund set up that you've been contributing to. You're in a position to basically buy the right stuff the first time. So plan for that. Like you said, have the plan.
Yeah. Hey, here we go. Because I mean, that's very important part. So, and we have to, probably end, financial discussion here because it sounds like it's going to become a financial channel here in a second. So, but
We don't
look,
want that.
no, it's perfectly fine. I mean, it's an important discussion we're having, and I think a lot of people, because I don't talk a lot about that, with the people on the show. And again, it's as you see here, I had a few of these people come on the show and discuss astrophotography. Not a lot of people like yourself talk about financial aspects of it, and they could be pricey. You should think about it. You should have a plan, talk with people first, and kind of go into due diligence process before we actually go and make a purchase. So that's really very important. But now for the people, let's take some time and dream what's possible out there. Once you're gonna get your feet in, you're a little bit more financially stable. You can buy some stuff. Maybe it's a Ford telescope, just like yourself, that you have,
Mhm.
and all of them are working, I'm assuming, let's say for somebody. And now we want to go and make something crazy. So the craziest thing, again, in this community is the thing that you have is home-based observatory. I think that's
Right.
probably the high-end kind of thing that, people are dreaming about having. So can you talk about, how did that project went? How did you decide to create it? How does it look like? And what do you want to do with it?
Yeah. So if you've got viewers on this that have been a subscriber of mine for several years, they would know that I started actually with one of those dome SkyShed pods, and I'd been talking with my wife for a while, and the biggest problem I had with astrophotography, the one reason why I wouldn't do it that often, and I like almost took a whole 2 years off where it was very infrequent. And this was after spending $6,000 on the Paramount. It was like I have a paperweight. Was the weather. It's so unpredictable in Texas.
Mm.
And so there would be times where I would start to set up in my driveway and it would get cloudy. Or the forecast would say it's cloudy, going to be cloudy. It's going to stay cloudy all night. Don't even bother. Thunderstorms, hails, tornadoes, cats and mice falling from the sky. And then I go outside, let the dogs out, and it's perfect. But it's 10 o'clock at night, and I've been inside watching TV thinking it's cloudy and it's not even going to be worth setting up. And I could have been imaging for 2 or 3 hours already. And then it stays perfect all night long, even though they were calling for some really bad weather that missed us. And so I was talking with the wife, how many nights have we had where we're outside with the dogs and I look up at the stars and I'm like, man, it would have been a great night to have had the telescope set up. And she goes, at least once a week. So can I have an observatory? Set everything up. And if we come outside with the dogs and all of a sudden I realize it's a great night, everything's already there. It's already assembled. I'm polar aligned. The camera's already plugged in. All I have to do is maybe plug an extension cord in to power everything and push the roof out of the way, lift up the dome and just start taking photos on the spot. And then if it gets bad weather all of a sudden, if it rolls in later than we were expecting, but I'm outside and maybe I hear some distant thunder and I turn around and see this towering thunderhead coming at me, it's just drop the dome lid and I'm done. I'm protected. 5 seconds teardown time and 5 seconds setup time is all that I would need. How many nights would I be able to buy back that way? And she goes, well, how expensive would it be? And I said, well, I know how to use a power drill, so I can build a deck to put this on in the yard so it's not sitting on mud. And I'll shop around and see if I can't find one of these domes for sale, because people are always upgrading from a dome to a roll-off roof observatory at some point. And so I did. I found a dome, a whole SkyShed pod for $1,000 in Kansas City. I live in Dallas. So I took a couple of days and I drove up to Kansas City and I bought it and brought it back to Dallas and I assembled it. And there's pictures on my Instagram from a long time ago. You can actually see the whole process of me cleaning all the paint that the guy put on the inside out and then assembling the pod and the deck that I built and everything. And I still have the deck, but I've sold the pod to a buddy of mine. He wanted it and I was going to the roll-off roof. Partially the homeowners association suddenly developed a problem with my pod sitting in the backyard. And so we switched homeowner management companies. The original management company said, yeah, you can have it, but they never actually filed the paperwork to make it official.
Oh,
And then when we switched companies, the paperwork wasn't
you don't
filed,
have
so there was
yeah,
no record of the approval.
got it.
And so they made me take it down, which was fine because I was actually in talks with a buddy of mine to sell anyway. So I was like, I'll just tear it down early. We were going to tear it down when he came to pick it up. I'll just tear it down now. And so I tore it down and he came like 2 weeks later. I helped him haul it away. And I think it was a year later My friend Tim came over, and I'd bought all the lumber, and we spent 2 weekends putting together the roll-off roof observatory. And I had purchased plans from SkyShed, and we were talking well before you started recording that I originally went to college for drafting. So I modified the plans and made a version of their observatory that will fit my specific needs. And I already had the deck built, so I had a footprint that I could use. Well, none of their plans fit that specific footprint. So again, modifications to make it work. And so my observatory is unique to me. It heavily inspired from SkyShed, but it meets the HOA guidelines that I'm supposed to meet if I have a shed in my backyard. And I mean, like it's more than I need, and it's still well under their guidelines. So there's some flexibility there. But I got all the HOA approval from the new management company and everything like that. So some of that assembly was documented also on Instagram. I wanted to make video of it and do this whole like long episode on YouTube of the assembly of the observatory, but it's just me doing the recording. So I can't like be recording, talking to the camera, helping my friend Tim and working with Tim, or having Tim help me while also building. Like I can't do it. That's too much for just one person to do if you seriously want to build the observatory in a reasonable time frame. And so we got it built, just the two of us, in like 2 weekends. And yeah, I've been using it for almost a year and a half, 2.5 years, something like that. So it's really nice.
Do you have a name for it?
Yeah, actually, I call it the Mostly Cloudy Observatory.
Mostly cloudy. Easy to pick. It wasn't hard to pick a name, right?
Yeah, nobody's got that name.
Got it. Okay. So look, again, another process, and maybe you can give us a little bit insights into, post-processing. A lot of people talk about that. Again, the work that I see, like what I personally prefer as a viewer, like I do prefer to see as closest to probably original as you could see being out there in space, let's say, call it this type of scenario. And again, I'm a fan of your work, and that's why I wanted to talk with you, because you're producing, it's not crazy over the top, like it looks like a piece of art, type of work. So maybe you can give us some insights. And again, everybody prefers different stuff. So look, I'm not judging anybody, but it's my personal preference. But post-processing, how is it difficult? How much time does it take? What type of platforms do you recommend? Programs. You being a programmer, maybe you can talk about some softwares. People talking about Topaz AI, which I'm sure there's a lot of AI type of based technologies will come up probably. Any programs, so maybe you're kind of seeing around the corner, maybe seeing some programs that could be changing the astrophotography industry in the future. Or maybe you can talk about that. Just the entire post-processing situation.
So you asked like 5 questions right there. So I'm going to try and go in order and try to remember to hit all of them there.
Just pick one and we can go from there.
Yeah. So I started with Photoshop like everybody does, right? And I moved on from Photoshop to using PixInsight for the majority of all of my post-processing. I've abandoned Adobe completely for everything. My videos, so I do...
Can I stop you? Sorry if I'm going to stop you. So any particular reasons why you stopped with the Photoshop?
Yeah, it's $10 a month for Photoshop, and remember, there was a period of time where I wasn't doing anything for like 2 years.
Oh, so it's only one reason.
Why would I pay a monthly service if I don't even take one photo a month?
But when it comes to the work, I mean, the processing softwares, it works pretty much the same. Of course, it just name's different, the way you do stuff is different, but the results are pretty much the same, right?
Well, PixInsight is just this massive purpose-built platform for all things astrophotography. And the biggest learning curve that I've figured out, I've been using PixInsight for like 2 or 3 years now, is it's the same thing with Paramounts. You're not going to use 90% of it. Your learning curve is actually figuring out the 10% of that program, or the 10% of the processing workflow that you're actually going to use. Because PixInsight does so much, and the Paramount IT can do so much, but I don't use 90% of what it can do. I just have one use case, so just learn that use case. And so I first just taught myself how to stack data over and over and over again in PixInsight, and that's what I use. And I it's very laborious. They
Mm.
have automated methods in it now. They've got a new module called the weighted batch preprocessor. I've been playing with that a lot lately, and I really like it. I think if you wanted to use PixInsight, but you didn't know how to stack images, and you read these tutorials and you see that there's like 15 different things that you need to do, don't worry about it. Find out how to just put your stuff into the weighted batch pre-processing script, and it does the 15 things that all these tutorials tell you to do.
Or Deep Sky
And it does it
Stacker?
in the right, huh?
Deep Sky Stacker?
Deep Sky Stacker, I don't like. It's just like, it's too much on Rails. Now, the weighted batch pre-processing is basically Deep Sky Stacker baked into PixInsight, but for a free program, it's absolutely worth its money. But because it's a free program, it's slow to change. You know, you've got an open source development community that's working on it, but for years it was abandoned. You know, I think it went like 6 years without an update. Registax is another one that people keep using for, I don't know why they use it. Registax hasn't had an update since Windows XP was the in operating system. So just think about how long ago we stopped using XP, and PixInsight is even older than that. Or not
If it
Registax.
works, don't fix it. You know, that's probably the rule in the community.
That's the problem, is it's the software is so old,
Yeah.
it's actually not stable anymore. I mean, it's a 32-bit program, and yeah, you can run it on Windows 10, but what happens when Microsoft switches over to a Linux kernel in 5 years? Because they're talking about integrating FreeBSD as their kernel, just like Macintosh did years ago with I think Macintosh was doing BSD as well, and now they're onto some other .nix flavor. But you know, Macintosh is or Microsoft is looking at going Unix based for Windows. That might mean Registax won't ever work again. But you've got AutoStacker 3. There's another program that I played with. It's still in its beta development. Planetary Processing System, I think is what it's called. I've got it on my desktop over here, but it's like I don't have an icon. I'd have to search through my program files for it. But it works just as well as Registax does, but it's modern. It's been written in, I think, Python. And so it's faster, it's multi-threaded, it handles 64-bit operating systems very well. And you know, it's nice, but AutoStacker also works equally well. The only thing you can't do in AutoStacker that you can do in Registax is wavelet sharpening. So if that's all you use Registax for, then that's fine. But you can do wavelet sharpening in PixInsight. You can do wavelet sharpening in Photoshop. You can do wavelet sharpening in Affinity Photo. It's done in a way that everybody's become accustomed to in Registax, and all of these other programs have their own implementation for it. But if you use those other programs, it'll actually work better than Registax because they're 64-bit, they can address more memory, they're already multi-threaded, so they run faster on modern computers. It's a little bit more to learn with, say, Photoshop or Affinity or PixInsight, but you can do the job faster once you learn it because you can access more computer hardware to do that stuff. So that's the stacking side. The processing side, you were talking about like the Topaz and all the other AI stuff that are coming out, and I've never used any of those, but I have used a lot of the scripts and stuff like that in PixInsight, and I'm borrowing this book from my friend Andrew Klinger, and kind of going through it because I've been using PixInsight for a couple of years, but I've just been doing it at my own, you know, watch a YouTube video here if I want to learn something. So now I've actually got the book. You can do basically everything that these AI tools can do, and they can do it with computer efficiency. Where I see this going at some point in the future is these AI tools will actually get integrated into our image acquisition systems. So if you're using like astrophotography tool, who's to say 10 years from now, astrophotography tool won't have its own live stacking, dark subtracting, flat framing, and AI sharpening system. So every time you take an image, it just adds it to the stack, it's cleaned up, and it's auto processed for you. And all you got to do is just play with the little sliders, like I want more shadow, or I want more highlight, or I want the color saturation to be this. And it just, every new photo just goes right in to this live stack and live processing. And so at the end of a night of imaging, you've already got a processed photo, like the system just did it for you. So I kind of see that as being a potential uh, destination that we wind up with software wise.
Hmm. Got it. So, I mean, you as a programmer, like, do you see any gaps or maybe something in the future that you can fill? I mean, maybe there's an opportunity for you to create something, some sort of program. Do you see anything? Because, I think one of the things that people get discouraged, and of course, is the equipment. How do you handle that? And of course, going as simplistic as possible, probably in the beginning, as you talked about, not getting into super advanced equipment and, just so it will be easier for you to handle and understand and operate. But then again, is the post processing. So would you see any gaps that could be filled by any software developers just to make, those beginners who are struggling with, equipment and post processing and editing just easier so they won't quit, in the process?
Uh, really, I think what Stacy's uncovered with Astro Pixel Processor is filling that gap quite nicely. Um, I have not used it myself. I paid the investment for PixInsight, so I just kind of stuck with PixInsight. But at some point, I want to touch on some of these others for the YouTube channel. My big deal is, and the reason why I haven't put out a video in like 6 months is I'm trying to aggregate a lot of different photos in a little library so I can do a processing video and show one technique, but I'm not always doing it on the same photo, right? So I could do one on, the M51 Galaxy, and then another one on M101, and then, Andromeda, and then, like my Horsehead Nebula or my Elephant Truck Nebula back here that I printed off, or some lunar stuff. I want to have a variety of photos, but where I live in Texas, it takes me a month to 2 months just to do a single photo, to get enough data to do a photo. So I'm limited to getting like 6 photos a year. And so my YouTube channel, you may not see anything from me for another 6 months, 8 months, or whatever. And it's not because I quit doing YouTube. I'm building up the material to then just kind of go all in and put out these videos on how to do these tiny little things and stuff like that. So AstroPixel Processor is one of the things that I want to take some of my data and I want to run it through PixInsight, and then take that same photo and run it through AstroPixel Processor, and then maybe Topaz or something else like that. And basically say, if you follow these 5 steps in PixInsight, they're the same 5 steps in AstroPixel Processor, but they're easier to use, easier to understand in AstroPixel Processor, or maybe it's the other way around. Maybe it's easier in PixInsight, but you'll have an apples to apples. You can evaluate what the same data in 2 different programs done the same way look like. And there's a really good chance that any of my friends who have both software, Helena or Ruzine or Astrostace, any of them are watching this and they've already got the data and they want to do that comparison. I'm not claiming I own these ideas. By all means, friends, help me out here, get that stuff out there, because I'm not the only educator on YouTube. I'm not the only educator on Facebook that is doing this. I've got a community of friends that have YouTube channels that they're trying to do the same thing that I'm doing. It is a massive mountain of knowledge that we are trying to convey, and we can't all do it ourselves. And so, if any of my friends are watching this and they have the means to make those videos before I do it. I don't own these ideas. I just recognize that there's a shortfall. Like you said, what do you see? And so the thing that will eventually probably replace all of this is kind of what I was talking about, where your integration software does all of the processing for you in real time. And we're already getting there with things like Stellina and EVscope, where they free stack these images that come in, and they'll do the derotation. Sorry, my nose. And they'll do, contrast and a histogram stretch, right? But they may not do any of the sharpening stuff, and they may not be doing any of the denoise stuff, or, basically the denoise and sharpening is what you get out of just raw stacking algorithms. But that doesn't mean that they won't do auto sharpening and auto contrast and color correction and, the 50 other things that you can do. And all you have to do in your image acquisition software is just tell it, I want it to do this much or this little of each thing as these files download, and then it auto stacks live for you. And if you don't like something, you got these little sliders or dials that you can adjust, and it will restack and readjust all of your files because the data is stored in a matrix. And so it would be really easy for you to just change something on the fly.
Yep.
And, you change it on the fly, and with computer hardware 5 or 10 years from now, my imaging, or not my imaging, my processing computer, it's like 32 core AMD Threadripper. It still takes a couple of minutes to stack images. So, you make a adjustment in one of these programs 5 years from now, and you got 50 photos that you've taken, you might see it instead of 5 minutes, 50 seconds, which, is leaps and bounds faster than it's being done today. But you'll be able to see a live stack, live process. What could it possibly look like? And then if you want to export that out and tweak it yourself, it's something that maybe is a little bit more versatile, like PixInsight or AstroPixel processor, you can. But I really, really think that 5 to 10 years from now, with the way AI is going and machine learning is going and things being able to leverage graphics processing a lot better than they could a couple of years ago, live stacking with some sort of filter applied, and I'm using the term filter because it's the Instagram generation, that has some sort of pre-processing baked into it. So you get your stack, it's already clean from the calibration files you have, and then it's applying the color correction, the sharpening, a histogram stretch to everything, and every file gets added to this. Every file you download from the camera gets added to the stack, and it just changes in real time before your eyes. Maybe not real time, but like a few seconds worth of data manipulation.
And a lot of people,
That's
I'm
why
sure. Yeah, it sounds great. I mean, for a lot of people, and I think it's going to be available for a lot of people going in the future, because again, it could be a tough part just to handle the post-processing, or, so the acquisition part seems really easy. I mean, with a click of a button, you get an image. Again, it's going to point to the right place. You're going to get an image, and the image will come out probably through Bluetooth or Wi-Fi directly on your phone at some point, and you can post it to Instagram, or maybe it's going to do it for you. So it's good to have that type of equipment, but it's going to take a lot of the fun for a lot of people who say, I enjoy the post-processing. I love that part. So there is that part of people, and there's the people who are saying, I just want to, with the click of the button, I want to have an image. I don't want to, I don't want to do anything with it. So like on that note, do you do like all the images that we see like on Instagram? I assume like all the data is yours, again, through your personal equipment. How do you feel about using, like a third party, like Observatory or NASA's data, and, using that to kind of learn the ropes, maybe in the beginning, to understand the way the post-processing works?
Yeah, just because I've never used it does not mean that I disagree with other people using it. It's an amazing resource, and it's a great way for you to get your feet wet if you don't have a means to, own a telescope and take your own photos. Maybe you just live in a place that's too light polluted to do it. You might have a telescope, but you can only really use it for visual on planets and the moon because of where you live. Or maybe you're just financially in a position right now where you can't even make the investment yet, and this, might be something that you can do 2 years from now. You can practice the post-processing by, downloading Hubble legacy data. And there's a lot of us out there that, we share our data. Galactic Hunter, I believe they've got data that you can get for free on their blog, and there's other data that you can pay for through some of their subscription stuff, like through their Patreon or their website. And they've got practice files that you can download, and you can practice stacking and then processing. Or they've got the stuff that's already mastered through the stacking process, so you can avoid the stacking headaches. You can just go right into throwing these into Photoshop and playing with them in Photoshop and learning it that way. And so there's absolutely nothing wrong with learning on other people's data. Where you're going to get into trouble is when you post it online and pass it off as your own. And a lot of us are quick to pick up on that, because, the people that are giving this data out, you're not the first person that's tried to do this with their data. We've seen it 100 times already. So if you try to pass off someone else's data as yours after you've processed it, we know. So don't even try, because you will get. Many people have destroyed their careers because they've taken a Saturn photo from Damian Peach. He collected the data, and it was available for people to follow his tutorials, and then they pass it off as their own. Like, I took this photo. Look at the photo I did of Saturn. They may not outright claim that they captured the data.
So they go as far as saying that they captured. Oh, okay. So they don't say that they captured the data. They say that the processing was theirs. But so they give a credit to where the credit.
No, they don't give credit to Damian Peach or Christopher Go or other people. Yeah, and so they'll say, "Look at my photo of Saturn."
Yeah, my photo.
If I told you, look at this photo, look at my photo of Saturn, what would you immediately assume? You would assume that I captured it and I processed it.
Yeah.
No, it's my processing, but someone else's data. So they phrase it in such a way that they're not saying that they captured it, but they're not clarifying that someone else did. They make it seem like it's theirs. And yeah, the people have been completely shamed out of the community by doing that. And us admins on Facebook, a lot of people don't know this. We've got our own admin back channel group. There's like 50 of us in there, of every astronomy Facebook group on Facebook. So if you screw up in one, we all know about it. We have receipts. We do screen sharing. We'll do screenshots. We will capture entire conversations and threads and everything.
The bad news
We
spread
know.
fast.
We know. We have records of everything. If you're causing trouble in one group and they ban you from that group, we get a bulletin in this other group. Here's who he was or she was. This is what they did. This was the
But
shitstorm.
it doesn't happen
became of
after
it.
the first time, right? We're not talking about the first time it happening. It's probably okay. Look, it's not a good thing that you did, but if it continues to happen, right?
There are certain. Hold on. I told you he'd be coming.
Here you go.
Maverick the Astro Dog.
Hey,
Yeah, there are certain offenses that we'll get on you and just say you can't actually do this. And then there's other things that it's like no tolerance. You're gone. Sexism is a big one for me. And I know that they don't talk about it that often, but there's a lot of women in astrophotography who have stayed silent in the hobby. Like they try to fly under the radar as much as they can, because they know as soon as they peak up, they have a target on their back just because of their gender. And I know several of them.
Any stories? Any stories? Because I would love to hear some stories. Okay, so got it. So
they're not my stories to tell. If any of these women and they know who they are, they've confided in me, and I'm not going to break that trust.
Yeah.
But if they feel comfortable coming forward publicly and explaining their story, and what it did to them, that's their story to tell. But it happens, and I want to at least inform people that there's a whole dark side to this as well. But these women, and I kind of forget where I was going with this.
Sorry, but I think that was a very intense moment, because I had a lot of the women on the show, and I'm gonna have many more. So for people who are, again, they're sexist, you're gonna get more of the good entertainment and videos coming from women, because these women are awesome. And again, like Stella community, which is again Helene is creating, and it's awesome. Like I spoke with a lot of those women from that community, and they're super professional. I mean, the work that they put out, it's just like it's mind-boggling. So and for people to judge, like still have this kind of caveman mentality. Okay, you're a different gender or whatever, having this type of inequality, which again in the 21st century should be, is like completely gone. We're talking about a thing that's supposed to unite us all. Doesn't matter gender, how much money you make, where you are, and it's still happening. Like that's why I wanted to hear the stories, because for people, they should understand that this is not supposed to be an issue here.
There's only one qualification that you need to do astrophotography, and is you just be a member of the human race. Or not even that. I mean, if you're a primate that has an intelligence that we haven't quite figured out, and you look up, fine. Be an astronomer. Be that primate that's an astronomer. Be that dolphin that's an astronomer. I don't care. But I just remember where I was going with this. The sexism is one of those things that if we pick up on it on Facebook, if I catch anybody in my group being demeaning, derogatory, mansplaining, or belittling a woman in any way, shape, or form with her photography, they're gone. No questions asked, no warning shots, no nothing. I ban you. I get screenshots of everything that you've done. I put you on blast in our admin back channel, and I'll let everybody know, if this guy's in your group, he's a troublemaker, he's misogynistic, he's a problem, and we need to get rid of him. And I try to kill that. And Stella, you brought up, you're right. You've had several members of Stella on this, and you'll have more because it's a big group. And You've done a great job of having a very, very balanced mix of male and female experts in STEM on your channel. You know, you've had people who are working for NASA, as well as astrophotographers or amateur astronomers. You've had authors and, you know, educators on your channel. And it's a very big mix of both men and women, and you've done it. So you're going to have more Stella members. But Stella, if you didn't know, was the answer to misogyny in astrophotography and amateur astronomy. And I really wish I could join Stella. I really do, because I identify with these women so much with, you know, their passion, you know, not the struggles that they deal with, you know, other men in the hobby, but these women have a fire about astronomy that I understand, but you know, they've got to have their place. That's, you know, the girls club or whatever you want to call it, you know, Stella. And it for the purity of it all, it has to stay women. Like, I wish I could join. And if they extended me like a membership at some point, I'd probably decline, because I think the purity of it, the fact that it's women only, makes it powerful, you know, because they have that sisterhood. And as soon as you start to bring in, you know, cis het men, you have a problem with that purity. And so, you know, Stella's a direct response to this, and I fully support the fact that you asked me ahead of time, is there a guest speaker that I would recommend? And she's the founder of Stella. So, you know, Diana, if you can get her on the show, and I asked her for permission before I submitted her name. She knows of you. She definitely wants to be on the show. So yeah, you get her on here. You can ask her about Stella. And you know, she's got stories that she wants to talk about. It's got to be her time. She's got to be comfortable. I'm not going to put anybody's dirty laundry out there, because it's not fair. I wouldn't want somebody talking about my bad experiences on my behalf. One,
yeah, I understand.
they don't have the whole story. Two, my memory is not what it used to be. You know, I've got 40 years almost of stuff up here, and I get things confused. And, you know, I might get 2 or 3 people's stories confused. And next thing you know, I'm accusing the wrong person of the wrong thing. And no, let the people who actually lived it tell those stories.
Exactly.
But yeah, misogyny, sexism, you know, being a bully or demeaning, anything like that, toward women is that's my zero tolerance policy. You don't get a warning, you're gone. And if I see it in the comment section of my videos, you're gone. I block you from the YouTube channel, and you're dead to me. I don't care. I don't need your subscriber. I don't need your view. I don't need your watch time. It means nothing to me. Even if you've watched every video twice, I don't care.
Yeah.
That attitude has no place in this hobby, and I don't want to associate with you at all.
Yeah.
So,
Exactly.
sorry.
So no, look,
I'm done with my soapbox.
no, look, I think it's very important message, and it has to be said, and it has to be told, because, you know, again, you brought up really great different perspectives, you know, on the show today. And of course, I want to talk about many more, you know, different things. But this one is really important, because I see a lot of, you know, women as being part of the astrophotography and in a science field, you know, it's just in you know, in the astronomy field. And, you know, the fact that this is continuing, and again, nobody brought it up in a show before. So I think it's going to be eye-opening for a lot of people, because I'm pretty sure like a lot of these groups, again, that you're part of, and, you know, your friends are part of, are being controlled, and those people who are bad influence are being weeded out. But the question is still, how much of that is happening, you know, on like cloudy nights or on a public forums where those people are not being weeded out. And I heard like countless stories where people are getting picked on and with no reason, and they get bullied and they get discouraged. So, but, you know, I don't get it. Personal, I don't get it. You know, like if anybody wants to bully me, please go ahead. You know, like I would love that. I would love to get criticism when people say, oh, you're, you know, whatever, like, because that's good. That means you're getting attention, like you're going somewhere, you know? So
Right.
with that, you have to take that pill anyway. Like nobody became like famous. I'm pretty sure like until this day, you mentioned, you know, like famous astrophysicist, you know, and he always gets the criticism. I'm pretty sure until this day, you know, that, you know, he does the TikTok videos. I know he's now famous for that. and people, he talks and he says, oh, look, his hands are shaking or whatever. People are going to pick on, small things. And, how you going to take that personally? Or you would be like, whatever, I'm just here to project the message to, inspire other people, and you're just going to brush it off and continue to move. So my advice for people, for women or for guys, look, don't take it personally. There's a lot of good people, more good people than the bad people. But when you're going to encounter the bad people, look, they're not after you. They're just projecting their own personal negativity, views on the world that are probably messed up, and so they have their own issues. So just move on.
Yeah.
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 But
that's exactly what it is.
Yeah. So look, going from this to the maybe more positive maybe side, if we can call that. Like, look, I want to ask you, like, you kind of achieved the ultimate, if we can call it the ultimate, in the astrophotography field, which is again having your own home-based observatory. I spoke with countless of astrophotographers. A lot of people like, I want to have that. That's like the ultimate thing. So the question now is, what's after this? Like, what's next?
I really want to start getting into some solar astrophotography as well. And I can do solar, but it's not the solar that I want to do. So I talked about that I've got a 4-inch stellar view refractor, and that telescope, the sun is like just perfect on my ASI 174 camera. And I've got a solar wedge, a Herschel wedge from Lunt Solar Systems. So that's my attenuation filter. I don't need to use solar film. And I used it for the solar eclipse back in 2017, and it worked great. But there's no surface detail. It's just all white light. And I want to get like a specialized dedicated solar scope, super narrow bandpass hydrogen alpha, so you can see all the little structures and stuff like this. I want to start getting into that. But them things are expensive. And so I'm kind of like in the saving pattern again. The other thing, I guess, where would I go next, because I've got the observatory, is maybe building out a second imaging system that's a bit more portable and wide field. So I can just grab and go to a dark site. Like, I don't mind tearing my equipment down out of the observatory and then putting it all back together when I get back into town from going out of town. But if I didn't have to do that, this is, again, it's just there's a convenience tax. If I don't want to spend the time doing it, then I need to buy something else that I don't need to have set up at all times, and then I can run it. So really, like, once I got up to, the Paramount level, or the pinnacle. Paramount's my mount. What I mean is, like, the pinnacle of, amateur astronomy and astrophotography is basically just have your own observatory. You can do it whenever the conditions are right. You're just ready to go. So now what's next? How do I do more of it? How do I do solar? Because I can do solar, but it's not the solar I want to do. How do I do dark site stuff easier? I can drive an hour north of me, and I could be in a Bortle 5 zone, which for me is like dark site. But Helena lives in like a Bortle 4. So for her to go to my dark site, it's worse light pollution, right? It's all relative. But, let's say there's a Friday night and Saturday night where I know it's going to be good conditions. A little travel kit that I can just go up there and do some wide field stuff and do the photography target that I want. Something that's easy to set up, easy to polar align. So, I can just be ready to go right off the bat. As soon as it gets dark, I'm ready to go. That kind of stuff. And then pipe dream, this will probably be one of those things that I'll always be working toward but never actually get to, is how can I do what Antoine from Galactic Hunter did? How can I go from working a corporate job to I just do astrophotography as my job? Make the YouTube videos, have the courses, have the resources, sell the photos, have just enough money coming in from 5 or 6 different things that I don't have to work corporate anymore. And that's something that I think I'll always be working towards, because I put so much time into corporate that it's going to be really hard for me to leave, because, it's comfortable here. It's like, welcome to the dark side. They've got cookies. I've got benefits. I've got a paycheck that's okay. I have a job that I understand, and, I know what each day is going to be like, and there's a certain level of comfort there.
Yeah.
to then leave all of that behind. And it's like, okay, now I have to literally earn every single dollar
Mm.
by doing astrophotography. I've been thinking for years, how do
Scary.
I monetize that? Yeah, it's
Scary.
scary because anybody can just like, why would somebody buy a photo of my moon? You can
Why
go to
would it?
Google and you can look at all, you can go to Google and look at all the moon photos you want for free. So why would you give me $50 for one of my moon photos?
Because it comes from Alan Mitchell.
But yeah, and some beautiful soul on TikTok found one of my photos and she's like, my son liked it. She saw your TikTok video and my son really liked that photo. And I want to buy it off you. And I'm like, I've never sold a photo before. I don't know how much to charge,
Look,
but I'll figure it out.
look, one thing I will tell you, like I talk with a lot of business owners, and some of the business owners, they like majority of them will have some sort of a stories like in that frame where you're starting your own business and you're kind of running things and you're asking for a
Mhm.
certain price for a service or a product. And it's like it's scary. You don't know what's going to happen, if people are going to like it or not. You kind of get the good feedback, people start to buy it, and you start to make good money in the business, or being as a employee working for somebody, and you're like, do people noticing like what we're doing here, and they're paying all this money is like, and you think like it's a dream. You think of like, do people realize what we do? Like you're talking about the pictures of the moon, and people making hundreds of thousands of dollars or whatever, being financially independent from their jobs, and they're
Mhm.
like, do people actually realize like what is this, and people paying us all this money? For you, maybe it doesn't make sense because you're talking from a passion point. You're talking like,
Right.
this is what I do, and this is for me. Like I don't want to get paid for that, but at the same time, you're like, I would love to have this kind of be a full-time thing where I can support myself financially, because we live in this time and in this planet where finances are needed for us to survive. If it won't
Mhm.
be needed, nobody will ask for it. You probably will give away all the stuff for free. But we
Right.
want to support our families. We want to continue to live our lives comfortably. So that's pretty normal that you should ask for your work, that you put in all this time and work and effort into producing it. So that, I mean, with me, it's perfectly fine.
Yeah. But like it's a question I've never been asked for. It's like I
Yeah.
would do this for free, and I've been doing it for free. Like my YouTube channel, I've had it for 6 years. I do it for free. YouTube pays me advertiser revenue,
Yeah.
but like I don't charge my
Yeah.
viewers to learn my tips or my tricks or to see what I've got going on. I got photos on Instagram that you can look at for free. Nobody's ever offered me money for what I do. So like I was put in a weird position like, well, if you want to give me money, I'll take it, but I don't know how much to ask
Yeah.
for. And so it's like, well, now I got to research how much do photographers charge for what they do, and I learned that that's a whole rabbit hole I did not want to have to go down. So I did.
Yeah.
I did the only thing I know how to do, and I made an algorithm.
Calculated for me.
Yeah, and so I've got an algorithm. I just plug in a few key parameters that mean money to me, and then it tells me how much to charge for a photo. So it's
Yeah.
like, how much integration time do I have in a photo? Like this, where's it here?
Yeah.
Little blue horse head nebula here. Um, that's a 26-hour photo.
Mm-hmm.
So I've got 26 hours times and what I call an integration surcharge. And then how long did I spend processing it? And I actually like keep track of how long I spent processing a photo. So, that horsehead nebula took me about 3.5 hours to process. And so there's a processing surcharge. And then the material cost, because I don't print these myself, I actually go to a photo lab here in Dallas
Mm-hmm.
and they print them. This is on metal. And so there's a
Wow.
cost for that.
Nice.
The Andromeda Galaxy above it, which there's some glare on there, so it might be kind of hard to see. And then the Elephant Trunk Nebula over there, and I've got like 3 or 4 others that I need to print. It's not economical for me to print one off at a time. So what I do is I save like 3, 4, or 5 of them at a time, and then print them all off. And then I'll drive down there and pick them up, so I don't have to pay to ship it to my house if it's just an hour and a half round trip, right? So
Do you
they've got
ever,
their cost.
sorry for interrupting again, but do you heard the story, like everybody knows who Jeff Bezos and what is Amazon these days?
Yeah,
It's not a river in a South America. It's this, huge global world dominating, brand and company that, makes life easier for a lot of people. And again, people make a lot of money through affiliate programs and things like that. It became this like giant thing, the richest, person, at least the Forbes says it, the richest person on the planet. But have you seen the videos or him telling the stories where he was actually packing the books while kneeling on the ground, like without having a tables, and he was like packing the books, like his back was hurting. Like I heard, because I from a business perspective, you learn from a different people, and I love the stories. So I heard countless of stories from him that he was like crunched down on the ground, like packing the books to make sure that he's going to deliver himself next day in a post office. He's going to ship
right.
them. And, that's how the Amazon started, because people see Amazon right now as this, global giant, but that's how things start. And that's the way it started. You starting here, because look, there's no shortcut in this thing, so, and you have to figure different angles where you're going to start, what you're going to do. So it like this story, and that's what it reminds me of when you tell that story of, I'm going to go myself, I'm going to pick it up, I'm going to package it, I'm going to do that.
Yeah,
Look, everybody started this way. So, I mean, it's great. I love these stories.
yeah. So yeah, I built a pricing calculator, and part of that pricing calculator has the material cost for the photo lab that does these prints over here. And then I just plug in what I have, what size you want. I figure out what price they charge for that size. I plug in these little variables, and out comes looks like I'm charging you $27 for that photo, or another photo. That one's going to be $100. Or you want it on metal? Well, that's $150 because the metal is expensive. And then ship it, on top of that. So I
But
got the
that's very
pricing
fair.
calculator.
But that's very
Yeah,
fair. So sorry again, Alan. But I think that's very fair for you to create an algorithm that's going to be making price calculations based on a different inputs that decided they're going to be the most important for you. Again, the time that you put into again, making an image, stacking
yeah.
it, post processing, everything like that. Then okay, how much my time is worth per hour or whatever, So all these different things. You're not actually, sitting there and thinking about scratching your head. Okay, let's ask for $100. You're
Right.
actually making a really decent and thoughtful adjustment.
So I took the emotion out of the pricing.
Yeah.
Like, I'm really attached to this photo. It gets, it was the most fun to do. I had the most fun processing it, and it turned out a certain way, and I absolutely love it. It was my, by far the best photo I've ever done. So I'm going to charge a ton of money for that. And nobody likes it. Let's just say nobody likes it because it's, it looks different, and they don't jive with it. So now I got an expensive photo that isn't selling. Does it sell because I priced it high, or is it not selling because I priced high, or is it not selling because people don't like it? So I'm basically pricing on effort, and it's my skill and my talent that sells it. So it doesn't matter how nice it looks. That's not influencing the price. It's the amount of effort that went into it. That's what you're paying for. You're paying for my time. So I'm trading time for money. And if my time made something beautiful, and you want to buy that beautiful, then that's the cost. That's what you as the purchaser would pay. And it would be the same across the board. It's not tied to emotion. And that was the fairest thing that I could think to do, because I don't know how to put a dollar amount on emotion or sentiment or anything like that. But I do know how to price out time. Like I said, I got a business intelligence background. I know how to take data and turn it into information. So that's what I did. And so I'm kind of trying to do the same thing with some of these other things that I've got my finger in. With my YouTube channel, trying to get some affiliate going on with the YouTube channel, so I can talk about something, educate people on something, give them the next steps. But if you don't own it, and you like where I'm going with this, and you think that you can do what I'm doing with whatever it was I just did, the affiliate links to OPT or Amazon would be in the description. You can purchase it. I made some money with OPT just selling the lasers to collimate a Ritchie Crichton, because I made a 35-minute video on how to collimate a Ritchie Crichton, and I collimated it at my desk here in this office in real time. It took, I think, an hour and a half to record the whole thing, and I cut out all the bad takes and the dead air and the me spinning the telescope around multiple times. All the stuff that sucked up a ton of time, cut it down to like 35 minutes. But you see the whole process of going from an out of collimation to an in collimation telescope, all the tools you need, and I explain every single step and why you're doing it the way you're doing it. There's diagrams and everything like that. And people are coming out of the woodwork saying that it's the best video that they've ever seen on Richie Crichton collimation. Well, it's the only best video out there because I watched every other video on collimation to myself learn how to do it, because I needed to collimate my telescope when I got it. And because I'm an analytical person and I've been solving problems my entire professional career in IT, I'm always looking for an efficient way to do something with everything that I do, even if it's making cereal. I make cereal the most efficient way that I know how to make it, which is the same way everybody does, because I think we already mastered the efficiency of cereal making, but that's the level of detail I go into. And so I made my own efficient way to collimate a telescope, Richie Crichton. And it turns out it was a lot easier to do it that way than what everyone else had been saying to do. I was like, well, I need to make sure that this works. So I collimated it 2 or 3 more times. And I'm like, all right, now I need to make this a video, because this actually works way easier than what everyone else has been saying. And so that ease of access to collimating a Richie Crichton has led to a couple of $100 in revenue for me. That's my own profit in affiliate sales on lasers and other tools and stuff like that. I've even sold a couple of telescopes, Richie Crichtons, through OPT in my affiliate link. So I want to start doing more of that, because that's you do your investment of time up front, but then you can earn your passive residual income for years to come after that. So going back to the question you asked a while back, what's next now that I got the observatory? It's doing these little things that add a little bit more to what I can do. More money coming in from affiliate sales or more money coming in from photo sales allows me to buy different types of equipment, because I have never taken anything from a sponsor. I've never taken anything from a company for free. Well, once I did, and I promised I would never do it again, because I had to write a bad review on the product, and it was a great product. I just didn't have the means to use the product in its optimal way. And I made sure that the readers knew, and I even sent it to the company before it got published. I said, listen, this is not a positive review, but it's not because your product is bad. It's because I'm not the right person for it. And I have shortcomings, but they read it. They said it was great. They said, go ahead and submit it to the magazine and let them publish it. We like it a lot. Fine. But I don't ever want to be in a position again where somebody as a vendor gives me a product under the pretense that I'm going to give it a fair review, and they're expecting positive, positive fare. No, I'm going to put my money where my mouth is. And so I've never said this on my YouTube channel, but I've talked about it with my friends, and I guess I'll just, come out and say it on yours, and we'll just announce it to the world now. If I review anything or talk about any equipment, I bought it. And it's my money, not someone else giving me something for free. And so it's, I'm putting my money where my mouth is. If I don't like it, I spent money to find out that I don't like it. And that's it was a costly mistake that I'm going to, educate the viewers on. And you'll know why I don't like something. And you'll be able to determine, is it the product that's bad, or is it me not being able to use it, like this auto guider that I was supposed to review. If I love something, you'll know why I like it. And you'll know enough about why I like something that you'll know it's not the right thing for you. Or maybe it is the right thing for you. But it's always going to be my money. And so to do more of that, I need more money coming in from these various things on like YouTube and the photo sales and who knows what else, the affiliate sales. Maybe I write a book or start an OnlyFans. I don't know, but yeah.
Very good. There's so many options. So many good options.
There's so many options, right? Yeah. I tried Patreon, that didn't work, so maybe OnlyFans will do it. But yeah, to get the more money coming in to do this full time. I mean, like I said, I like my corporate job, but I've already talked to my wife. She's had the year off because of COVID. She's rearing to get back to work. And I said, we get to a position where we have the savings that we had pre-pandemic. could I take a year off and pursue astrophotography and astronomy and try to make that work for me? And she says, absolutely.
Wow.
But
What a great partner.
we got to make sure, yeah, we got to make sure that we got everything squared away
Yep.
first. So yeah, 2 or 3 years, I might take that leap.
That's awesome. That's
And
awesome.
I think it'll take us 2 or 3 years if she gets a job this year. It'll probably take us another 2 or 3 years to recover to pre-COVID levels with our savings and everything like that.
Yeah. Look, that's fine. But, coming back to your images, because when it comes to the price, I don't know, guys, if you want to, because I just Google it right quick. So, so I just want to tell you guys, because I don't want to sound intelligent when I'm going to be able to say, like, I know a lot of stuff. But C.Y. Twombly, if nobody heard about this painter, Google the image. It's called Untitled 1970. It's painted in 90, or if I can call it painted, because it looks like it's been some scribble like on a chalkboard. Sold for $70 million. So, and what does it say? I mean, what does the picture say? I don't know. Maybe somebody can leave a comment and let me know what type of feelings, or maybe the way you understand the image and what you get from it, because I didn't get anything from that. But when you look at the images, I mean, that you project, of these nebulas or galaxies or whatever, objects you pick there in the universe, you get the different look. You're looking into the universe. You're looking in the past. It makes your mind to think, like, what's out there, what's possible, what I can do more, how can I expand my own personal views and understanding what's happening there in the universe. So there's happening multiple different things on a multiple different dimensions at the same time. So, and it's definitely a positive thing. And you don't have to pay $69 million to experience that. So look, I do encourage, like, a lot of astrophotographers who I talk with, they want to go towards, creating their own, they want to sell paintings and do things. I know there's a lot. I had a great painter. She does paintings of these, objects. I mean, it's beautiful, just inspiring people and opening up their own personal views and what's out there. Because, the amount of people that never seen a Milky Way, do you know, like, percentage wise, I'm pretty sure it's in the 90s. It's probably in the 90%, So now you're going to be opening up, this kind of perspective, and it's going to be, oh, look, this is a real image. I took it. This is the exposure time. This is the stacking time. This is the post, So we be like, oh, Jesus, like, can I do something like that myself? And here you go. Another person joins, another person looks at a life in a different way. So it's a positive outcome. Again, Google the image, guys, because it's pretty ridiculous, at least for me. But look, anyway, people do the great job with the paintings. Good for them. Look, one thing that I wanted to ask you still is with this, look, a lot of the different missions happening right now in space industry. Again, I know we had, SpaceX again today or yesterday happening, a crew launch. This morning, here you go. So like, what space missions or what projects are you personally paying attention, like, in the space industry? Anything you want to point out to the listeners or viewers?
The one that's got my ears twitching the most, I think, is deserving an unfair amount of attention right now, and I'm buying into that. And that's the Starship from SpaceX. I'm hugely invested in that. I'm not a fan of Elon Musk, but I am a fan of his companies. Okay, so Elon Musk is the piggy bank, right? You were talking about, your hedge fund guy. He picked all the top 10, Nobel Prize level talent and put him into his hedge fund to do all of his quants, right? Well, Elon Musk does the same thing with engineers to build rockets and to build cars and to dig holes in the ground or put electrodes in people's brains or to start online academies for kids with differential learning.
Alan, maybe your company is doing the same with you.
No. No, they're not. So anyway, that's what, Elon Musk does. He funds all of these cool things, but he's not doing them. He's the controversial face of a lot of these different things, but he's not doing it. He didn't develop electric cars. A lot of people think, oh, that's Elon Musk's company. The untold story about this, you probably know about it. Tesla was actually founded by two other guys a few years before, And Elon Musk really liked it, and so he bought into it and then worked the other two guys out of the company and literally
He
ran
Mark
them out.
Zuckerberg it, right?
Yeah, yeah, totally. So yeah, he screwed one guy out of the company, like bad blood, and the other guy allowed himself to get bought out of the company, and then that's how Elon Musk got Tesla. SpaceX, yeah, he did a ton of the seed money for that, but he wasn't sitting down developing the rockets. He's got an electrical engineering background in capacitors and semiconductors and stuff like that. He knows nothing about rocket surgery. He can doodle on a napkin on an airplane, you know, when he's doing a transatlantic flight because he's bored and say, I want this to be reusable. But I guarantee you there was no calculus on that napkin to actually work it out. That he paid somebody for. And everything that he's done with SpaceX is great, but he's paying people for it, and he's the face of it. So that's why I'm not really a fan of Elon Musk, because I see through it. I see that the real talent is the engineers at SpaceX. The reason why Tesla cars are doing 400 miles on a charge, where Volkswagen Group's electric charges are, 300 miles or 250 miles to a charge. Tesla has the top electrical engineers solving the toughest problems, and they're pushing the envelope faster. It's the Tesla engineers and the battery technicians and the chemists and the material scientists that are figuring out these new ways to make a lithium-ion battery and try to get away from the cobalt problem that we have in lithium-ion batteries. And they're solving hundreds of different challenges all at once. Elon's just the publicity guy. He's the hype man. He's the sales guy.
Look, right? I had the guy Hans Yuli. If you guys want to go and search for that episode, he's a financial analyst. He works with the SpaceX, and he used to be an investment banker in Wall Street. So we're talking just about financial analyst. So what about, again, as you talked about, the engineers, the developers, the R&D guys, so he's acquiring like top of the chain like talent.
Yeah. So the other program that I'm really keyed in on that people seem to forget even exists for a year or two at a time, and then all of a sudden, like, it hits the headline for a day and it's public memory, like, oh yeah, that was also happening, is Blue Origin, which is Jeff Bezos. And again, it's another, I'm not a fan of Jeff Bezos, but I'm a fan of the engineers that he's hired in the Blue Origin to do these reusable rockets as well. New Shepard is the space tourism one. And then New Glenn is going to be, I think, commercial payload delivery and International Space Station servicing stuff as well. And that'll be the competitor to like the Starship or the Starliner that they're doing at SpaceX. The Artemis program, I know that Will Young is a huge fan of that one, Deep Sky dude. He's actually toured the Artemis assembly plant that they were doing in Florida, and he got to see a lot of the cool stuff that was going on down there. But that one, I think, is going to be mired with bureaucratic BS because it's being built by so many different organizations and it's being managed by the government, which is why the it was, I think, originally the Orion constellation or whatever it was, rocket, and they changed it to SLS, and now they're calling it Artemis. I mean, it's had like 4 different names because it's gone through 4 different iterations of bureaucracy, and it's been around for probably 15 years, and they're just now starting to do like full-size static fires down in Georgia or Louisiana, wherever it is they do them. Within that same amount of time, SpaceX has gone from Grasshopper to Starship. So private industry pushes the envelope faster because they have to. It's sink or swim. You've got to either innovate faster than everybody else so you can stay ahead of the curve and remain profitable, or you die. And with the government, they don't have to worry about running out of funding. They just
budgets, calculations, there is time frames, which is ridiculous. And for the startup companies, that's it. You said it. Either you're going to make money and you're going to survive, or you're going to close doors, and you're going to have people running places like at the speed of light, like all the time. And they will be like, oh, okay, what we have to do to make this ship, not to sink, but to continue to travel and to operate and to grow at the same time. So it's I admire like people like you mentioned, Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk, for that, so they kept those ships afloat and now they're becoming pioneers in the industry. They opening up doors for a lot of people and showing them an example of what's possible. Of course, those people, we cannot put them on a pedestal because they had available capital to support those efforts. Again, if you
Hmm.
come from zero, from scratch, from nothing, I don't know the situation of Rocket Lab or where this guy's coming from. I didn't do enough due diligence. But when you come from nothing and you survive and you create a company, just let's say the size of a SpaceX, that would be an amazing achievement, from nothing.
Yeah. Yeah, and you're right. Rocket Lab's another one that I even until you mentioned it was they only come around every so often. You kind of forget they exist.
Yeah.
I think they're the ones that do the Proton rockets.
Mhm.
I know that they fly under the radar, and that they don't seem to one seek or acquire the publicity that SpaceX does. SpaceX is a media whore. I mean, they put themselves out there everywhere because they want people to know about them. But the weird thing is, like, the people that they're impressing, you and me, we're not their customers. So I'm
Oh, yeah.
really curious to know why are they doing? Because we can't buy SpaceX shares. It's a private company, right? They might do an IPO later, but right now it's private investment only. At least if they've done an IPO, I'm completely unaware of it. I think Tesla's the only public company that Elon Musk is a part of anymore.
Mhm.
I don't think he's a part of PayPal at all at this point.
Yeah.
Um, but they're impressing us, and we have no
part of
way
that
to.
part of that, sorry again, but I know that I spoke with a few people about why SpaceX is not pushing on the market efforts. And some people, I know that there was behind the scenes kind of discussions about putting more wood on the fire and creating this noise, which is right now is happening. That's what we're talking about. And through that noise, coming back to the point of we're talking about talent acquisition, that's how they acquired the talent. As they post the content, let's say there's a live YouTube feed and there's going to be a link saying go and register, like employments or whatever. So people who are going to be watching, they will be like, okay, there's a link, I can go and actually apply for the positions that are available. It's a smart. Yeah.
I get it now. Now I know why they're trying to impress the people like you and me, the everyday Joe.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not so we. It's not so that we can be customers of them. It's so we can be inspired and then like, wait, I can work for them.
Especially in these times, look, a lot of people are looking for, yeah.
Yeah. I know that I had an opportunity to submit an application with SpaceX when they opened up down here in Texas. Um, and I read through the job requirements, and no, they're hunting for the unicorns in their field. They wanted a business intelligence developer, which is, at the time I had been doing BI for 6 years, and yeah, they wanted like 5 years experience. I've got 6. Great. What else do you need? And then they want a master's degree and, this and that. And, they got to know like 10 different programming languages. And I'm like, but that's not business intelligence. What you're looking for now is a software engineer that will write reports for you. So you want a software engineer to not do engineering, and basically take a step down. So they're hunting for the unicorns. They're looking for those unemployable software engineers that have a broad set of skills, the very wide but not very deep, that are willing to do reports because they can't find a job anywhere else. But they'll be doing reports for SpaceX, which is a cool and sexy job, a cool and sexy employer. So I think you're right. I think that they were trying to get people like me at the time inspired with what they're doing by making big waves, or like you said, putting a lot of wood in the fire to make a bunch of noise. Um, because yeah, I mean, I did. I was like, well, what does it take to go work at SpaceX? And it's, a dream sheet this long,
Yeah.
and I have 3 of the 50 qualifications that they're looking for. And
Jesus.
honestly, at the time, I was making more than they were offering for the job.
Yeah. But look,
So
you get the privilege to say that I'm working with SpaceX. You cannot put a price on that.
no, you can't. But what do they say? Exposure doesn't put food on the table either. So just because you're working at SpaceX doesn't.
It
And
looks good on
don't get me wrong.
Instagram.
SpaceX does pay pretty well.
Oh,
But I've made more, and they probably pay better for those positions in today's market than they did. When I was looking at it, 5 or 6 years ago when they first came to McAllen, Texas. But I make more than they were starting that position at when it first came to Texas, and so I was like, Nah.
Yeah.
And now, if I had all of the other credentials, I probably could have gone to work at SpaceX. And if I were to do it today, maybe double what I'm making now, just because, SpaceX is so much bigger and they're much more established in the market
Yep.
here.
No,
So,
and SpaceX is for sure like it's a great company. I don't want to sound like I'm saying, oh, don't go to work for SpaceX. Go if you're
no,
suitable, if you want to, if you're driven that way, you want to be part of that culture. You want to get close to Elon Musk. You want to shake his hand and say, hi, Elon, good morning. And happy Monday. Like that's perfectly fine. Like I would probably love to do that myself if I would be qualified, to do that type of work. But we're gonna need those people regardless if they're making that noise to acquire the talent, and that talent can
mhm,
be used in different sectors for whatever, maybe scientific purposes. If we're talking about that, we're gonna need so much more talent if we want to go to the Mars, when we want to create sustainable living on the different planets.
mhm,
Like, and the fact, like I remember, because Elon is all about going to Mars. And
right.
Rocket Lab, and I had a few people on the show recently, and I don't know that, but they said the Rocket Lab plans to go to Venus. So, and they're actually thinking about creating sustainable living on Venus. So, which is now like, where are we going to go? What are we going to do? So, what is the entire plan? What do you think with this Mars colonization, occupy Mars situation? Like, what's your thoughts on that?
They're complicated. So I think there will be a lot of people who die on Mars before we get it right.
Hmm.
And that's the price of exploration. I mean, look at human exploration just on the surface of our own planet,
Yeah.
right? The first people to leave the old for the new, wherever it was, coming out of Africa
Mhm.
into, the Middle East and then spreading through the other. I guarantee you the first people to leave Africa were not
Yeah. People died.
the
Yeah.
ones that made it. It probably took several generations and several attempts to leave Africa before somebody finally got it right. Leaving Europe for the Americas. Um, there's a reason why the first ones didn't stick around that long. They went to where they were going, they gathered whatever information, and then they came back. Is because they knew that they couldn't survive there. Um, I'm in Texas. I'm used to summertime highs of 40 Celsius, 100 degrees Fahrenheit or higher. I talked to my friends in Canada, and their summertime highs are my wintertime average temperatures, right? They can't come down here and
Yeah.
survive in the summertime. They would die.
They can
And
adapt
they could come,
over time.
yeah, you think. I mean, I
Maybe.
grew up in Nebraska and I still hate the cold. And I lived there for 22 years and I've dealt with some cold weather, not Canada cold, but you know, it's
Yeah.
cold. I've been in temperatures that are 15, 20 Fahrenheit below zero for weeks on end. That's cold. I
Yeah.
still hate it. I did that for 22 years. Now I live in Texas after living in Phoenix and Las Vegas. Texas it's just got everything I need. Um, but it's just the weather is a huge determining factor on whether or not our old civilizations would stick around where they would try to colonize. So eventually they figured out, instead of sailing from Europe to Florida, where it's freaking hot and you'll die that next summer because you can't deal with the humidity and the heat, we're going to go from, England or Spain to New York. And the temperatures will be fairly the same because they're at the same latitude. And so that's why, that general area, the New England area, is where we settled America first, coming over from Europe. Because the climates were the same and we knew that we could survive that. And so we're going to see the similar type of thing on the moon, and we're going to see a similar type of thing on Mars. And it's not necessarily the climate, because neither place has climate, but it's such a hostile environment to us that the first place that we're probably going to live are going to be these extinct lava tubes.
Mhm.
And we're going to have to find a way to build a habitat in an extinct lava tube on the moon before we go to Mars. But nothing man builds can last. Everything will has a mean time between failure. Everything will fail at some point. And so, despite the best engineers and the best material scientists and the best redundancies and backup plans that we have, something small is going to go bad in a big way from time to time. I mean, look at Challenger, something small, little O-ring. It got too cold for too many hours, and they launched the rocket before it had enough time to warm up properly,
Yeah.
and we lost the entire shuttle. Columbia, um, that one was coming in. Why? Because a tiny piece of ice
Mhm.
fell off a tank and chipped a thermal tile on the belly of the aircraft, and that was enough to cause it to break up over Texas on reentry. What was it, about 18, 19 years ago? And those are just two. The Hindenburg, something small. It just, the
Mhm.
wind blew just the wrong way and it crashed into the tower, I think, and there was some static involved, but it was filled with hydrogen and boom, lesson learned, don't use hydrogen gas in a Zeppelin. So there's all these little things that you can think of, and you can run all the AI simulations you want because we've got that tool now. And you come up with all these outlandish, creative, crowdsourced even theories of how things can go wrong. And then you're going to have that one day where something no one else could think of goes wrong in a bad way, and you lose the colony or people on a colony. So I don't think we're going to have complete colony loss on Mars or complete colony loss on the moon, but I do think that there will be a human price to pay. I don't think it's going to be steep. I'm not talking like millions of lives lost just to have millions of lives, but it would be really naive to say that dozens of lives would would be lost. Um, 20, 30, 40 people over 100 years dying on these various bodies. But that's the price of it to pay for exploration. And these people that would go to another world and die there, knowing the risk, I think is a testament to the drive that we have. Elon Musk wants to get us to Mars. And he wants to do it because he honestly believes, and he's probably right about this, that we're going to screw Earth up in a big way where we won't be able to survive here very long. Our children or our children's children may be the last generation on this planet.
Oh, Jesus, is that
They're,
close?
well, you don't know. You don't know. I mean, there could be an asteroid coming that we can't
Oh, yeah.
stop. It could be runaway climate change. We know that we're affecting the climate. How close are we to Venus? Venus went from Earth-like to hell-like in a astronomically short period of time. How close are we to that? How long will it take for us to be 50 years away from inhospitality on this planet? Are we already there and we don't realize it, or is it 100 years away? Is there a way to reverse it, or are we literally going to have to abandon the planet and just let it do its thing and heal itself without us? There's enough life in the ocean, plant life in the ocean. Eventually, it will deacidify the ocean, and it'll clean the CO2 out of the air. That might take 1,000 years naturally. So we may have to go to Mars, and that's why Elon is trying to do that. But we might be in a do or die situation 50 years from now or 100 years from now. And if you rush it, you're going to make mistakes. And so that's, the human tax that we would end up paying.
Yep.
So Elon wants to get to Mars because it's lose billions of lives on Earth and possibly end civilization, or lose a dozen lives on Mars figuring out how to get it right. But those people know the risk and they're signing up for the job anyway because they believe, just like I believe and just like Elon Musk believes, and several other people believe, the clock's ticking. The doomsday clock used to be the clock about nuclear war, and it's now just the end of civilization. And the clock is, I think, just a few minutes from midnight. Like, it's the closest it's ever been to midnight in at least 20 years, if not ever. I mean, it's like right there. I think it's gone to 1 minute to midnight one time, and we're almost, I think we're like 90 seconds from midnight right now or something. I'd have to look it up.
Yeah.
But
No,
yeah,
it
it's
doesn't
that.
it doesn't look good. Like, it doesn't look good for sure. When we have the COVID, we have the financial crisis, we have the unemployment at the
Mhm.
probably the highest rates from the 1917 depression or whatever number pick, the last depression. I mean, the
Yeah.
times are really difficult for a lot of people, and I think, again, and the news are, of course, they do the best possible job to project the message in a positive way, that, oh, life is great,
Yeah.
look, the cases, and this is happening, the war is going to start, and so of course there is no wonder that we have this message and the and the projection in our head, like the world is about to end. So, but the
Yeah.
question is, and I always ask people again who are astrophysics, astrophotographers, astronomers. What about getting some sort of a third party inputs? You know, if it exists, and let's go to the sci-fi section now, if we could, and think about, is it possible? And again, by looking at the documentaries, again, I'm going to air quote them again, because who knows if those are documentaries or maybe just some loon created beautiful looking images, and oh, there's something out there. We don't know, because we don't touch anything yet, at least as far as, you know, depends who you're going to listen to. But I think it would be great if we can receive some sort of a third party input from somewhere that would be, as we talked about aliens always being kind of advanced, that could help us to fix some of those problems. Because again, we have some big issues. I'm not talking about COVID or financial problems. I'm talking about global warming, you know, just,
Right.
you know, poverty, or, you know, whatever. Those are big problems too. But do you think there's something out there in this realm that is more advanced, that, you know, that maybe we encounter them already?
No. Well, look, I jumped the gun on that one. We have not encountered them. Okay, they have not been here. Is my belief. I'm not going to say that it's fact, because I don't know everything, and I certainly was not around to have witnessed them if they were here, or to, you know, witness their absence if they weren't here, you know, long ago. But there's certainly compelling arguments in the historical record that says we may have had intelligent visitors at some point. But there's also compelling arguments that say actually it's this. Like, people always fall back on the, we don't know how they built the pyramids in Egypt, so it must have been aliens. Turns out what you don't hear, because the people who are saying we don't know are louder than the people who are saying we do know, which is, you know, always the misinformation problem. They actually left us instructions on how they built the pyramids. Like, we know how they did it. Like, it's there. It makes sense. We understand their technology at the time, and it works. So we know how the pyramids were built. We know why the pyramids were built where they're built. They were recreating the constellation Orion in the heavens. And they were doing that for religious purposes. So it's not to communicate with aliens. It's because certain gods and certain deities and everything lined up a certain way with the constellation of Orion. So they built out the pyramids of Giza to fit that constellation to do that. So it's not because the aliens were communicating with us. Remember, if the aliens came here from somewhere else in the galaxy, Orion would look differently to them. They would not have seen it the way that we saw it, unless they came from Mars or something like that. So why would they build a constellation of our night sky as a way to communicate with us, and not a constellation of their night sky to communicate with us? Right? That would have been the reference frame, you know, their night sky, if they were doing it here.
Yeah, it's by our logic.
Right. So that's, you know, like I said, there's evidence on both sides. They're both compelling. I don't know which one to believe.
Yeah. Same here.
But I know what I believe, and I believe that they are in the universe. I also believe that we aren't being visited by them. Our solar system is kind of a freak. Like, our nearest star is 4.5 light years away, and it's a multi-star system. And almost every other star in our galaxy is a multi-star system with planets. We're a single star with planets. We are weird, and we're kind of orphaned too. You know, you get, how many clusters are there out there in the night sky, and star fields and stuff like that, where stars are plentiful. We're between spiral arms in the Milky Way galaxy, but within the spiral arms, stars are really close to each other. They're half a light year apart. So you could conceivably have civilizations in communication with each other, where it's, you know, you send a message, they'll get it in 6 months, they can reply back, and you could have, you know, yearly data dumps between civilizations. Our nearest planet harboring star system is Alpha Centauri. It's 4 years away, so it'd be 8 years round trip. But those planets, as far as we are aware, don't harbor any intelligent life, because we would have heard it from, you know, from that distance by now. They're not transmitting any radio waves that are coming in our direction. They could be directional, but not in our direction. So they aren't doing anything omnidirectional. We haven't heard anything, nothing that we can identify as an intelligent signal. We also know that the star Proxima Centauri, which has some of these planets orbiting it, is it's a red dwarf. They're temperamental. They really like to just put out gobs and gobs of solar flares and other types of radiation. A lot of it's UV, and it's bad for the surfaces of some of these planets. It'll strip their atmospheres away pretty quickly.
Mm.
Other stars that are nearby, like Vega, that's 30 light years away. That was the star from Contact that supposedly sent us a signal. And we know that there's a high probability of planets around Vega, but Vega's a big star. It's bright, it's bigger than our sun, and it puts out a ton of UV radiation,
Mhm.
and it probably has an intense solar wind. So any rocky planets that would be near that star, in the same way that Earth is near our sun, probably not having a whole lot of life. Atmospheres could have been stripped. So you get these, rocky, helly Earths all over the solar system. But those are just the stars nearest us. You go to other stars, and they're starting to find these rocky planets that actually could be in the Goldilocks zone with liquid water
Mhm.
and atmospheres around stars like our sun. We're starting to find a lot more of them, but they're nowhere near us. None of them are close, but they're probably close to some of their neighbors. And so, I think that we're just so far out in the sticks. We're like the last contacted tribe of the Amazon, and the rest of civilization is happening somewhere else. They're out there.
So we're
They
being
just haven't
left
been here
out.
yet.
Is that's what you're saying? We're just left out.
Yeah, and the thing is, if we were to have this third party communication like you were talking about, where they could like see us through a lens somehow and understand what's going on our planet, they're 200 light years away. We haven't hit the Industrial Revolution yet.
Mhm. Yep.
They won't be seeing the spike of greenhouse gases.
Yep.
So our planet is still perfectly hospitable, but we need their knowledge today.
Mhm.
50 years from now, they'll start to watch the Industrial Revolution happen, but there won't be any warning signs.
Yeah.
100 years later, they'll start to get into, the 1900s, early 1900s, big coal and the electric revolution and massive factories and the whole, like explosion of industry and the development of, all the big superpowers in the world. That's when they'll start to realize, this is getting out of hand. But 150 years have passed here on Earth. Where are we going to be 150 years from now? Will we have already started solving our own problems and we don't need it'd be welcome, but we don't need it.
Mhm.
Or are we on? Are we on Mars now and we're letting Earth heal itself without us? Who
Yeah.
knows?
Yeah,
So
it's so sorry again for interrupting, but this is a huge topic again, and like nobody knows an answer. I mean, we can, give out again. There's a lot of different theories. Like one of them is Drake equation. Is like
mhm,
people talk about that. Oh, this must be based on the Drake equation, or there's another theory. It's called panspermia. Have you heard about that? You probably heard what
panspermia.
panspermia. Yeah, exactly. Where
Yeah,
there's basically a meteor in a universe who's carrying some sort of a bacteria, it hits the planet and inhabits
right.
suddenly throughout the evolution habits. So there could be floating those bacteria-like asteroids, in the universe carrying some sort of bacteria-like life.
Mhm,
And that scenario could be happening on different planets. So maybe it could happen millions of years or billion years before on different planets. But again, we don't have any answers. And I love the fact that again, people in NASA, you remember the case of a Voyager carrying the golden plated disc,
mhm.
giving this to the aliens. Oh, look, the aliens will be able to read this because this is in code. This is the DNA. This is our location in the universe. So, those scientists thinking about that, and like there should be something out there again based on whatever equation that they're using, but we don't know. Like we don't know what's happening because based
No.
on because there's so much documentaries and like I heard so many people, and there's like people, guys and girls, who can Google that stuff, and you can find like sightseeings in New Jersey, like where people like 20, 30 people seeing something and seeing an object, seeing green people walking out in Zimbabwe, where objects landing in a school, and these kids saw it. They kind of had the conversation, if we can call it, with this creature. I mean, like personally, I'm neither for it or against it because, like, for me, I just have to see it myself, feel it, touch it. Like that
Mhm.
would be like yes. But I would love to have somebody on the show who is into the UFO again, not the lunar type of person, but somebody who would maybe explores that type of part because it's very interesting, and
Yeah.
touchy subject. So I think it could be great to
Yeah.
explore.
And again, I wholeheartedly believe that even though the Drake equation, and I just read this, recently about the Fermi paradox and the Drake equation, and how they kind of reconciled it. The Fermi paradox isn't really a paradox at all,
Mm.
and that there's a supposedly if you plug the numbers in and you dial the Drake equation just right, we are alone. Like we came to the party too late. Like 2 billion years ago was the heyday of extraterrestrial civilization. But in that 2 billion years, the civilizations have faded from existence, and then we're kind of like that. We just sprung up
But
in an
that
ant hill in Africa
but
somewhere.
that's kind of sounds bad because if everybody
Yeah,
was there in a party and now they're gone, so that means this is the kind of the where this is heading to.
yeah. No, I mean, basically, it's like everything comes to an end, right?
Yeah.
Like all good things must end at some point. How close are we to that end? But
I don't want it to
um,
end.
no, neither
Look,
do I. And I
Elon,
really,
please look, figure this out. We
yeah.
need you.
And I really do think that these civilizations they still exist out there. I don't think that we're alone. I think that there's hundreds, if not thousands, that are at least equal to us in our galaxy.
Yep.
Our galaxy's big, right? And we know that we've been putting out radio waves for about 100 years into space, which means there's a sphere around Earth that's 100 light years wide that our radio waves that are non-natural have propagated to, but they're probably so weak at 100 light years away that a civilization as advanced as us may not be able to pick up that signal. It will have attenuated too much, and they may not be able to distinguish it very much from the background noise of space, right? Or what if the radio transmissions coming off of our own sun and the interactions of Jupiter's magnetic field drown out? Because remember, it's going to be a point
Mm.
source to them, just like they're a point source to us.
Mhm.
So what if the interaction of the sun and Jupiter's magnetic fields and the radio waves coming off of that are 500 times louder than the radio waves we're putting out? So we're just the quiet whisper in a
Mhm.
loud party
Yep.
coming from our soul. They may not be able to hear us.
Good
So
point.
no answer from them at this point doesn't mean that they don't exist. We haven't detected them, they haven't detected us. That's all it means. So I do still think that they're out there. We probably can't hear them because we can't hear through maybe interactions going on in their solar system as well. Maybe they've got two Jupiters in their solar system, and so they put out twice as much radio interaction from the host star and the Jupiters as we do, and we can't detect their faint, puny little radio transmissions coming off of a Earth or a Mars-sized rock
Mm.
100 light years away. And
Do
remember,
you,
those transmissions are 100 years old.
do you remember
So,
do you remember the movie Contact?
oh, that's exactly what I'm trying to reference
It's
here.
a
Yeah,
great movie, yeah.
yeah, yeah. Like that, they could hear like,
Yeah.
oh, there's this pattern or whatever. You There could be so much other noise going on when you point at a star. We may not actually be able to pick out all the radio waves that are going on or all the signals. I don't understand how signal processing works. And
Mhm.
I don't understand how quiet of a signal they can actually pick up from a star system. But I do astrophotography, and I know that I can't detect the difference of light from a star and a star with a planet in front of it. So if I can't do that with my equipment, it is not impossible to assume that despite our best efforts, we still can't detect a radio signal coming from a radio hot source like a star with magnetic field interactions coming from Jupiter. And I know you're going to get an astrophysicist at some point in the future on your show who's going to reference this conversation and say that I'm completely full of shit and that we can do it and we've been listening and here's the math that goes forward. And if that day happens, I will be so happy because it means I was wrong and we learned something. And
That's it.
that's really what all this, everything that we've been talking to since we
Yep.
started this conversation goes back to science literacy and educating people and teaching them
Yep.
things that they don't know. Like I've got a YouTube channel where I try to teach people. I volunteer at an elementary school where I try to spark curiosity and teach kids about it.
Yep.
I'm a member of all of these different astrophotography groups where I try to mentor and answer questions where I can. I've got so many different things, so many different ways that I just want somebody to be 1% smarter on this topic that I know about than they were yesterday. That's it. That's all I care about. And if enough of us do that, then we all get smarter. So if
Yep.
you get that astrophysicist on here next month,
I
next
have
year,
to now.
whatever,
I have to. I have
Yeah,
to.
you have
I
to.
will be like, have you
And
watched? I will have to send him the Alan Mitchell episode first, so he have to watch
just
it.
that clip, just the clip about me saying I don't think we can hear the difference between a civilization's radio frequencies and the noise coming off of a star and the magnetic field interactions with different hot Jupiters. I would hear what they have to say and say, you know what?
I'm pretty sure some
For
some
somebody
guys
who,
googling it right now. You know.
yeah, and we're gonna probably get a bunch of hate comments in the down below saying he doesn't know what he's talking about. You know what? I don't, because I'm not a radio astronomer, and it's
Same
my
here.
own ignorance is
Same here.
why I don't know that we can do it.
Yeah.
You know,
Same here.
educate me,
Look,
educate.
exactly half of the time. Look, guys, you probably know by watching these episodes, and maybe I got a little bit smarter throughout the episode 90, and going further. Of course, you acquire more information and knowledge from people like yourself about different topics. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter who it is. And again, I'm not looking to discredit anybody. There's a lot of great, again, probably not even top 1.1%. People in the industry who are just genius people. I'm talking about, again, Albert Einstein, those type of people, Nikola Tesla, who are just born, unique. And those people can figure, and those people see, universe or life in a different way. I'm just a regular person, and I'm absorbing as much information as I can. Most of the time, I don't know what I'm talking about, but I know one thing, that I'm curious, and I'm looking to find out about the things and to get multiple perspectives, and not to be biased on certain things that I think I know the answer to, because at the end of the day, nobody knows what the hell are we doing here, So,
Right.
yeah.
No, George Carlin said it best. The point of living is to not die. Like that's it. Like at its simplest, that's really what it is. That's why we're here, is to just not die.
That's why we have brains. They do a good job.
Yeah, it's figure it all out while you're here, while you live as long as you can on this little rock floating around a little point of light in the night sky. Take in as much of that world as you can. The world I chose to take in is astronomy. The world you chose to take in was astronomy. And if there's somebody watching this podcast tomorrow, next week, next month, whenever, and it gets them thinking, and they decide that it's not astronomy they're into, but maybe astrobiology or astrogeology, and they want to study other planets or the possibility of life on other planets, or maybe it leads to biochemistry. That curiosity at some point might lead to the development of a treatment for cancer.
Yep.
Just because you got them thinking about life, the big question, why are we here? And then they start thinking about life on other planets, and then what would that life be like? And then, our minds meander, and they just ramble over thought after thought after thought. And what you start with as a seed idea, 5 minutes later, is something completely different sometimes. And that's the kind of curiosity that I try to get these kids to think about when I do the elementary school stuff. That's the kind of stuff that I wanted my YouTube channel to try and do. And again, it's kind of hit a brick wall recently with me trying to get, I'm trying to regroup. But I want people to start asking questions, and I want them to start thinking outside of the box. And I get asked a lot. I've got this one video that shows people how to use a DSLR camera for astrophotography. It's like 8 different things that you can change. And people always ask me, what settings should I use for my camera? And it's like, you didn't even watch the video, and that's one of the frustrating things. And I think it's partially my delivery, but the people that do watch it, they know that I don't give individual settings in that video. What I'm doing is I'm getting you to question, how should I be using it? And be okay with experimentation. You can't change the ISO on your camera and break it. So why not play with it? You can't change the shutter speed on your camera to take a picture and break the camera. So why not play with it? Dick around with everything, see what you can come up with. Take notes, because if you don't get to do it for a month because the weather turns bad, your notes will let you know real quickly what you did, how it worked, and it might inform you the next place to go. And just be scientific about it. And so, yeah, you don't know what type of curiosity you can get somebody thinking about today that leads to a solution for a problem we haven't even thought of tomorrow. So
that's great. That's great. So look, I mean, you do a great job with delivering the message. That's a clear fact, and we find this out in today's, episode. So I do encourage a lot for you guys to go and check it out. Alan's, again, YouTube channel. You can find it on Instagram. Well, the YouTube is definitely a place to go. Make sure to subscribe, of course. That's very important. And go to click that notifications bell, to keep updated, because I know he drops the episodes very often. Just, dive deep into the topic and find all the answers. Because I mean, some of the videos I'm looking at right now, like 1 hour 30 minutes. I mean, you can spend some really good quality time here with Alan and learn the tricks and the trades and the ropes, get the ropes of the astrophotography. So look, besides your personal plans, what you want to do with the YouTube, hopefully through my own personal efforts, I can support your YouTube growth, or some, help you with some other projects as well. I would be honored to help you with that. Again, Instagram or whatever else you're working on, having the ultimate goal, observatory at home. Awesome. Like, what will be, you think, looking a little bit far off in the future, let's say 20, 30 years, 40 years in advance, what do you think your personal legacy is going to look like?
I'm not prepared for that question. That's a big question.
No, nobody does.
It is.
Nobody's
Yeah,
prepared.
I was gonna say, if I should have studied for that by watching some of your previous episodes, then I must have bailed too early. Honestly, I don't need a legacy that can be tied directly back to me. I wouldn't mind having touched a few lives, which I've done, in a way that 30, 40, 50 years from now, the impression that I left on somebody today or a year ago, they still remember it. Like, I don't want to be forgotten. If I can stay in somebody's memory, then it means that I did my job right. Even if they don't remember me, exactly me, but they remember there was this one guy when I was a kid, or there was this one guy when I was, out camping at Yellowstone, and he had a telescope, and I didn't get his name, and I couldn't see him real well because it was dark, but he showed me the moon and it changed my life. That's what I'm after. And I know that I've done it at least once. And if I could do it one more time, that'd be great. I got this boy that lives across the street from me. He's 4th grade, maybe 5th grade this year. Loves space, and because of the pandemic, he hasn't, his parents don't want him coming around that much, and I get it. My wife doesn't work, so she's not a risk, but I still have to travel and go into the office, and I do the majority of our grocery shopping. And his whole family, they're fortunate enough that they can work from home 100% of the time, where I don't have that luxury, and so they do a lot of the Amazon groceries and stuff like this. So they're protecting their kids, and they're doing a really good job. And he hasn't had a chance to come over recently, but we actually video chat on Facebook from time to time, and he writes me little reports on Saturn or the sun. They're like 5 sentences, because he's 5th grade. I don't care, but he draws pictures, and it's great. And so I take pictures, then I send it back to him and stuff like that. And so we have this, this conversation. Like, I've changed him. He thought space was cool. He came over and hung out in my observatory for a night with his dad, and anything he wanted to look at, I showed him how to use the computer. He would point the telescope. He was in control, and the bug bit him hard. So, like I said, one time, I know I've changed some kid's life, and he's hooked. Then he wants to come back over a lot of times, and his dad's like, not tonight. You got to get up early for school, because he's doing online schooling, and it's got a certain time that he has to do it, and the things he wants to look at come up after midnight. It's like, you can't do it tonight. So, but hopefully after the pandemic, it'll be a little easier for him to come back over when he's going into class a little bit more regularly, and things iron out. But touching more lives, I think, would be the legacy. And I don't care if people remember that it was Alan Mitchell that did it, just that it happened. That would be my legacy.
That is awesome. That is awesome. I mean, what else you can add to that? Because, and look, as I told you in the beginning of the conversation, if you remember that, this is already kind of happening.
Yeah.
The legacy is happening. Again, engagement, following, people, you network, whatever, you have it. So this is happening. I'm not talking about the kid, which of course, opposite side of the street, great, awesome. Those, face-to-face interactions and seeing people change on the spot. but a lot of the change is happening here behind the scenes, behind the closed doors, and
Yeah.
yeah. So I admire again. So that's why I admire your work. I admire again your delivery, what you're doing with the YouTube channel, the way you continue to grow that, put in the time and effort, and look. My personal mission, I told everybody, who's been here on the show, to inspire more people to do whatever they feel is good for them in this industry. Because if you want to go from this scenario of, okay, there's 2 billion years ago, there was a party happening and now it's gone, like we have to solve that problem. And we need many,
Mhm.
many more people, not just for the SpaceX, but, in different parts of the industry. So here we go. Yeah. So here we go, guys and girls. Yes, awesome. I mean, my mind is kind of going through different directions now, but make sure to get in contact with Alan. Again, as you're going to find an Instagram link down below. Shoot him a DM, ask him questions about astrophotography. Of course, we didn't discuss on the show about this a lot because, again, he has dedicated, YouTube channel to that, goes in detail, in depth. So make sure to go and check it out. That's in the show notes too. And look, Alan, again, it's a pleasure that you've been on the show. Thanks. I really appreciate the time. And, I love the passion. I love everything that you do. And again, as I told you, if I can, help you to support these efforts going in the future, it would be my pleasure too. So thanks much.
The honor's all mine to be able to, come onto your platform and, use your audience to communicate what I know, the things I think about, how I got started, where I want to go. Letting me get that out there to inspire somebody in your audience maybe to take a similar path that I did, if that's where their desires are. Maybe they now see the path that I took and that looks like a path that they might want to follow if they didn't even know where to begin. So again, no, thank you for having me on the show. It means the world to me that you would lend your audience and their attention to me in the hopes that even one of them or two of them can gain something from this. So thank you.
Awesome. No problem. Anytime. I think this deserves episode 2.0 with Alan Mitchell sometime in the future. I think it could be a great conversation as well.
Yeah, we'll leave it up to the audience. If the audience wants it, let them, put up a poll or, bring it up in the comments if you want to see more of me, or maybe you come onto my show. I do one of these on my channel and, give you access to my almost 6,000 subscribers as opposed to your subscriber base.
I told you.
I'm sure there's a lot of overlap, but
yeah, I told you. Look, it's not up to that, guys and girls. We live in this social media age where we count the likes and the follows and things like that. Again, it's all about inspiring one person at a time. Of course, it's good, but look, it's all about that. It's all about going and inspiring other people to pursue this and be part of this space industry. So here we go. Another great episode. So thank you guys for watching. It's been Alan Mitchell. Appreciate you watching.
Thank you.